Chapter 2899. Chunibu Girl Elderchin? I'm sorry, but I've never heard of this person. I'm not interested in meeting this so-called Elderchin. Zhuowen frowned slightly, feeling somewhat baffled. This was his first time in the giant spirit sect, and he didn't know the Elderchin that the two guards were talking about. Now that the two guards suddenly asked him to meet this so-called Elderchin, Zhuowen was naturally speechless. When Zhuowen said this, the two guards' faces turned gloomy. One of the guards said fiercely, "Impudent! It's your honor that Elderchin wants to meet you. He's the strongest person in our giant spirit sect now. He has a high position and is giving you face by meeting you." "What? I don't want to meet him, but you're forcing me to meet him?" Zhuowen's face turned cold. Although he didn't want to cause trouble, if trouble provoked him, he wouldn't avoid it. The guard who originally spoke ruthlessly couldn't help but tremble when he saw the coldness in Zhuowen's eyes. It was as if he was being stared at by a terrifying beast. Due to an inexplicable fear, the guard forcefully swallowed back the ruthless words that were about to escape his mouth. The other guard also felt the coldness in Zhuowen's eyes, but he was obviously more courageous. He shouted, "You're impudent! Could it be that you want to fight?" Slap. Unfortunately, the guard had just finished speaking when he was casually slapped away by Zhuowen. He smashed into the ground not far away, and his cheeks were completely swollen. "I don't have time to talk nonsense with you. I still have important things to do. If you continue to talk nonsense with me, I don't mind staining my hands with blood." Zhuowen narrowed his eyes, not concealing the killing intent in his eyes at all. Now that he was fleeing, it was naturally impossible for him to waste time in a small sect like the giant spirit sect. He only wanted to reach the boundary of the domain as soon as possible and then escape the domain of the 10 Extremes Corp sect. "You? How dare you?" The other guard was immediately frightened. His cultivation was similar to his companion, and they were both only half-step heavenly Tao lords. However, the young man in front of him had casually slapped his companion away. His strength was far above the two of them, and he should be a Tao affirmation expert. "What? Do you feel unhappy and want to stand up for your companion?" Zhuowen looked at the guard coldly. The latter was so scared that he fell to the ground, without any will to fight. The commotion at the city gate naturally attracted the attention of the other cultivators entering and leaving. Many cultivators were engaged in a heated discussion in the distance. The subject of their discussion was naturally Zhuowen, the main character of this incident. Zhuowen did not attack again. Instead, he brushed past the guard and entered the city gate. After Zhuowen walked far away, the guard knelt on the ground. Just now, Zhuowen had given him too much pressure, causing his muscles to tense up. Now that Zhuowen had left, he relaxed a little and knelt on the ground. "No, I have to inform Elderchin as soon as possible. The scarred youth he is looking for is in our giant spiritual city." The guard thought of something and immediately took out his communication jade talisman and sent a message to Qin Yuanshui. Giant Spiritual City was the most prosperous city of the giant spiritual sect. Zhuowen walked slowly through the streets of the city. When he came to the giant spiritual sect, he was not worried that his disguise would be seen through. Moreover, he also found that there were no masters of the 10 Absolutes Corps sect stationed here. Perhaps it was because the giant spiritual sect was too weak and inconspicuous that the 10 Absolutes Corps sect had probably forgotten about this sect. "It seems that I have to cherish this rare peaceful time. When I reach the border of the domain, a life and death battle is inevitable." Zhuowen muttered to himself. He deliberately slowed down his pace and enjoyed the calm feeling. Suddenly, Zhuowen smelled a fragrance, and then a beautiful woman with an icy cold expression walked towards him. She didn't say a word as she pulled his hand and forcefully brought him to a small alley at the side. Zhuowen was surprised, but he did not break free from the woman's hand because he did not feel any malice from her. "Excuse me, Did you come from the valley hundreds of miles away from the giant spiritual sect? The beautiful woman stopped and turned around. The coldness on her pretty face had been replaced by excitement as she asked excitedly, "Eh? Miss, how did you know?" Zhuowen's gaze immediately became serious. His muscles tensed up like a vigilant beast. The beautiful woman also noticed Zhuowen's abnormality and hurriedly said, "Friend, I have no malice. I just want to confirm with you. This question is very important to me." "Yes." Zhuowen nodded. He could not help but think of the eye of nothingness that appeared outside the valley last night. Could it be that the owner of the eye of nothingness was this woman? The beautiful woman exclaimed. She was so excited that tears filled her eyes and she sobbed. Zhuowen was a little speechless. If outsiders saw this woman like this, they would definitely misunderstand that he had done something shameless to make her cry. "Miss, you." Zhuowen did not understand and could only helplessly open his mouth. The beautiful woman realized that she had lost her composure and quickly apologized. Then she said seriously, "Friend, I'm really sorry. I was too excited. I'm the granddaughter of the giant spiritual sect master, Sun Ruoyu. You can just call me Ruoyu. How should I address you?" "Just call me Ma Yujie." Zhuowen did not hesitate to steal Ma Yujie's name. After all, he was now wanted by the 10 Extremes Een Corp sect. The name Zhuowen could not be used carelessly here. Otherwise, someone would die. "So it's Brother Ma. I wonder if Brother Ma is willing to succeed the position of sect master of our giant spiritual sect?" Sun Ruoyu regained her composure and said something that made Zhuowen extremely astonished. "Miss Ruoyu, you were joking just now, right?" Zhuowen was speechless. This was the first time he had seen Sun Ruoyu, and it was also the first time he had entered the giant spiritual sect. Now, Sun Ruoyu actually asked him to succeed the position of sect master of the giant spiritual sect. This style was really wrong. Could it be that succeeding the position of sect master of the giant spiritual sect was so simple? Was it so childish? Was she teasing him? However, Sun Ruoyu's beautiful eyes were full of seriousness as she said, "Yes, the position of sect master of the giant spiritual sect belongs to you. As long as Brother Ma agrees to me, then you will immediately become the sect master of the giant spiritual sect." Zhuowen was completely defeated by Sun Ruoyu's serious expression. "I say, you're lying through your teeth. Miss Ruoyu and I have only known each other for a few minutes, and you actually want me to succeed the position of sect master of the giant spiritual sect. Are you sure you're not joking with me?" Zhuowen tried to open his mouth to wake Sun Ruoyu up. He thought that this ice-cold beauty in front of him might be a Chunibyu girl. What she did was too stupid. He couldn't accept it at all. It was too childish. Unexpectedly, Sun Ruoyu still shook her head. She said very seriously, "Brother Ma, I'm not joking. You may not know the way our giant spiritual sect chooses the next sect master. Before my grandfather passed away, he used the art of divination to calculate that the next sect master will be a young man with 2 scars on his face in a valley hundreds of miles away from the giant spiritual sect." Chapter 2900. The sect master's position delivered to the door, divine divination technique? Zhuowen was surprised. It was the first time he heard that a sect used divination to select a successor. This was too strange. However, Zhuowen recalled the pair of eyes of nothingness that appeared in the air above the valley when he first arrived. Could it be that the eyes of nothingness were what Sun Ruoyu said? Could it be that the former sect master of the giant spirit sect used the art of divination to manifest it? "Brother Ma, you are not a cultivator of our giant spirit sect, so you may not know what the divine divination technique is. The divine divination technique comes from the divine divination secret. It is a powerful Tao that can peer into fate and avoid disaster. It is a very mysterious power. Generally, the successor that can be deduced with the divine divination technique can basically lead the giant spirit sect to the peak. Sun Ruoyu explained. Zhuowen shook his head and expressed doubt. Since the divine divination technique is so magical, why is your giant spirit sect still declining? Isn't it said that it can seek good fortune and avoid disaster? Logically speaking, with the help of this divine divination technique, your giant spirit sect should be thriving day by day. Sun Ruoyu sighed softly. Brother Ma, you don't know. The divine divination secret is really too mysterious. It is difficult for ordinary people to cultivate it. The recent sect masters only know a little bit of the divine divination secret. They can't even seek good fortune and avoid disaster. And it was even worse in my grandfather's generation. My grandfather couldn't even reach the entry level of the divine divination secret. In the end, he used a forbidden technique to burn his life force to finally use the divine divination technique to find the true successor of the giant spirit sect. Speaking of this, Sun Ruoyu looked up at Zhuowen with a hopeful look and said, Brother Ma, what my grandfather described before his death is almost exactly the same as you. You are the real successor that my grandfather found with the divine divination technique. In the entire giant spirit sect, only you are qualified to succeed the position of the sect master of the giant spirit sect, and only you can lead the giant spirit sect to the peak. Zhuowen rubbed his nose. He was absolutely certain that the owner of the Eye of Nothingness was Sun Ruoyu's grandfather. Speaking of which, when he saw the Eye of Nothingness running away in a panic, he thought that the Eye of Nothingness had seen through his true identity. Therefore, he borrowed the power of the lightning of heaven and earth to attack the Eye of Nothingness. Although the Eye of Nothingness had escaped in the end, Zhuowen knew that the power of lightning had caused considerable damage to the owner of the Eye of Nothingness. Perhaps the old sect master's death had something to do with Zhuowen. Thinking of this, Zhuowen felt a little ashamed. However, that was a special time after all, and he was fully alert. An Eye of Nothingness had suddenly appeared and spied on them, then quickly fled. Naturally, he couldn't let it go so easily. What did your sect leader say before he passed away? Why are you so sure that I'm the sect leader's successor? Zhuowen was curious. Sun Ruoyu didn't doubt him and repeated the old sect master's words before he died. After Zhuowen heard this, he smiled bitterly in his heart. Perhaps the old sect master didn't want to appoint him as the successor. Perhaps he wanted to say that he, Zhuowen, was the culprit that caused his divine divination to fail. Of course, Zhuowen only thought this in his heart and wouldn't say it out loud. Although Zhuowen didn't care about Sun Ruoyu and the entire giant spirit sect, this place was still within the domain of the 10 ultimate Corp sect. He didn't want to cause any trouble and attract the attention of the 10 ultimate Corp sect. Miss Ruoyu, your grandfather might have other intentions. I don't think it's me. I still have something to do, so I'll take my leave first. Zhuowen didn't want to be entangled with Sun Ruoyu and the giant spirit sect, so he casually found an excuse to leave the giant spirit sect and head to the domain boundary. However, Sun Ruoyu stood in front of Zhuowen, her beautiful eyes full of determination. In order to perform the divine divination, my grandfather didn't hesitate to burn his life as the price. Since he said it's you, then it's you. Zhuowen had a headache. Sun Ruoyu was too stubborn. Did she think that he was the sect leader? I say, Miss Ruoyu, you're the direct granddaughter of the sect master, and your talent isn't bad either. You're the most suitable person to be the sect master of the giant spirit sect. Zhuowen spread his hands. He still had a lot of things to do and didn't want to waste time in the giant spirit sect, so he simply refused Sun Ruoyu's request. Sun Ruoyu was a little anxious. She said eagerly, Brother Ma, you seem to be in a hurry. Do you have something urgent to do? If you have something urgent, I can help you after you succeed as the sect leader of the giant spirit sect. Zhuowen was speechless. He could only say, Miss Ruoyu, in fact, I'm not a cultivator of the 10 ultimates Corp sect. I'm just passing by. Now I have something important to do, so it's inconvenient for me to stay here for a long time. Therefore, it's impossible for me to succeed as the sect leader of the giant spirit sect. Brother Ma, are you leaving the 10 Ultimates En Corp sect now? Sun Ruoyu looked at Zhuowen strangely. Why? Is there a problem? Zhuowen pretended to be surprised and asked. That's not a problem, but I'm afraid you can't go out during this period of time. The 10 Ultimates En Corp sect has completely sealed off the domain boundary. At the boundary, you can only enter but not leave. No matter who it is, even the disciples of the 10 Ultimates En Corp sect can't go out. Sun Ruoyu said. What? No one is allowed to pass? Zhuowen's face was gloomy. Although he knew that the 10 Ultimates En Corp sect would definitely take action, at most, they would just tighten the security of the domain boundary. But he never thought that the 10 Ultimates En Corp sect would be so ruthless and directly seal off the border. No one could go out. Yes, Brother Ma, you can't leave the 10 Ultimates En Corp sect's domain now. How about this? You can become the sect leader of the giant spirit sect. Half a year later, there may be an opportunity to arrange for you to go to the Starry Sky battlefield. At that time, you can also leave the 10 Ultimates En Corp sect's domain, Sun Ruoyu said. Half a year later, Zhuowen asked doubtfully. Brother Ma, don't you know? It's said that somewhere in the Starry Sky battlefield is the place where ancestor sorcerer Gonggong died. Now the whole Xianmi heavenly territory is spreading this news. Moreover, the sect leader of the 10 Ultimates En Corp sect, Senki Yin, has released news that in half a year, he will point out the specific location of the place where ancestor sorcerer Gonggong died. With this news at that time, heroes will gather and come out in large numbers. It will be very lively. Now, many experts from various forces have gone to the Starry Sky battlefield. Even the foreign tribes of the primitive heavenly territory are ready to make a move. Sun Ruoyu was a little speechless. She felt that Zhuowen's news was too outdated. Was this guy really a cultivator of the Xianmi heavenly territory? The place where ancestor sorcerer Gonggong died. Chapter 2901. Face slapping. Speaking of which, when Zhuowen participated in the Monster Genius Conference last time, Yi Qidong and the other geniuses came because of this news. However, Zhuowen left early and did not participate in the discussion of Ghost Plume. In addition, he immediately entered the underworld hell to collect the elusive underworld soul flower after leaving the Monster Genius Conference. After that, he went to rescue Yin Wuxia and then began to flee. Naturally, he did not have time to inquire about the news released by the 10 Ultimates En Corp sect. If Sun Ruoyu had not mentioned it, Zhuowen would not have known about it. However, now that he knew, he had to go to the Starry Sky battlefield. He might not care about the corpse of Ancestral Witch Gonggong, but he cared about the venomous insect in Gonggong's body. His Pangu sacred body had reached the peak of 5-star. As long as he got Gonggong's venomous insect, he had a great chance of breaking through to 6-star. In addition, the boundary of the 10 Ultimates En Corp sect had been sealed. Zhuowen gradually dispelled the idea of breaking through the boundary and leaving. He knew that breaking through was a bad idea, and the success rate was not high. It would be easy to alert the enemy. When Sun Ruoyu saw that Zhuowen was tempted, she immediately added fuel to the fire. She advised Zhuowen to stay in the giant spirit sect for the time being. After the limelight of this half a year had passed, it would be much easier for him to leave the En Corp sect. It had to be said that Sun Ruoyu was eloquent. In addition, Zhuowen was already tempted. Zhuowen finally nodded and agreed to succeed the sect master of the giant spirit sect. Sun Ruoyu breathed a sigh of relief and was overjoyed. She had finally persuaded the guy in front of her. Brother Ma, come back to the sect with me now. After 7 days of my grandfather's death, I will arrange the sect master succession ceremony for you. At that time, you will be the new sect master of our giant spirit sect, Sun Ruoyu said with a smile. Zhuowen took another look at Sun Ruoyu and his eyes showed surprise. He had to admit that Sun Ruoyu was indeed very beautiful. Among the many women Zhuowen had met, only Yao Xiangjuan, Mu Qinxue, and Moyan Wushang were comparable to this woman. They were rare beauties. Zhuowen's Sun Ruoyu, naturally Sun Ruoyu, could see the surprise in Zhuowen's spirit sect, but she was natural. She did not show a shy look like a little girl. She led Zhuowen and Zhuowen walked sect. Of course. Sun Ruoyu. Zhuowen nodded. Sun Ruoyu gave him a good feeling, and she was very sincere in receiving him. Is sect? Is? Of not studio? Of course time of studio. Is of time? Studio is of time? Studio of course of studio? Brother Ma, this is the inner sect of our giant spirit sect. Sun Ruoyu brought Zhuowen to a very spacious area. In this area there were many tall buildings. However, these buildings seemed to have been built for a long time and looked a little shabby. However, judging from the style of these buildings and the vicissitudes of life, this inner sect should have been a prosperous scene in a long time. Although at a glance, there were still many cultivators coming and going within the inner sect. But they were basically ordinary cultivators with mixed talent. The number was not many, far from reaching the scale of the general Dao sections. Sun Ruoyu saw Zhuowen shaking his head subconsciously, and her face was a little red. She said, Brother Ma, although our giant spirit sect may not be as good as the general Dao sects now, I think Brother Ma will definitely be able to develop the giant spirit sect very well in the future. Miss Ruoyu, do you believe in me so much? Zhuowen looked at Sun Ruoyu next to him strangely. Sun Ruoyu smiled and said, I believe in my grandfather's divine divination technique. This technique is the most mysterious technique of our giant spirit sect. All the successors who can use the divine divination technique in the past have basically not missed it. Zhuowen was a little speechless, thinking that this girl has blind confidence in the divine divination technique. Speaking of which, Zhuowen had heard about the divine divination technique from Sun Ruoyu several times. He couldn't help but be curious in his heart. Is this divine divination technique really so magical? Junior sister Ruoyu, haven't you always been clean before? Why did you suddenly bring back a dog man today? Just as Sun Ruoyu brought Zhuowen into the giant spirit sect's inner sect, a sharp voice with sarcasm sounded. It was very harsh. Zhuowen followed the voice and saw 3 people walking over. The person in the lead was a young man with a pale face. He was dressed in white and had a white band on his head. He was holding a folding fan in front of his chest in a very pretentious manner. Behind this young man in white were 2 middle-aged men. They should be this young man's subordinates. Zhuowen saw the hostility in this young man's eyes at a glance. Moreover, this hostility was directed at him. He didn't need to guess to know that this young man in white was hostile towards him because of Sun Ruoyu. Zhuowen shook his head inwardly. As expected, he wasn't suitable to walk with beauties. He always suffered hostility for no reason. However, Zhuowen didn't care. This young man in white's cultivation was really just passable. He was only a half-step Heaven Dao Lord. He was older than Sun Ruoyu, and his cultivation was far inferior to Sun Ruoyu's. Clearly, his talent was really quite poor. Chen Shixin, what do you mean? What right do you have to insult my friend? Besides that, what does my friend have to do with you? Sun Ruoyu spoke coldly. The young man's eyes narrowed as he placed his attention onto Zhuowen. When he saw the scar on Zhuowen's face, he was first stunned, and then a strand of killing intent erupted from the depths of his eyes. Junior sister Ruoyu, you're really swift. You actually found him. But what's the meaning of bringing him into the inner sect? Could it be that you've forgotten what you promised my father? Chen Shixin laughed coldly. Sun Ruoyu's voice was extremely cold as she said, Chen Shixin, let me tell you clearly that I only believe the results of my grandfather's divination before he passed away. Brother Ma, let's go. As soon as she finished speaking, Sun Ruoyu intended to pull Zhuowen along and walk past Chen Shixin. However, she quickly noticed that the young man behind her was like a rock that didn't move at all. Brother Ma. Sun Ruoyu gazed at Zhuowen with a bewildered expression. Zhuowen smiled faintly at Sun Ruoyu, then walked past Sun Ruoyu and arrived in front of Chen Shixin. He said indifferently, "Did you just call me a dog man?" Chen Shixin didn't expect that the young man Sun Ruoyu brought would actually stand up. He was stunned at first, then laughed cruelly. "What? You're still not convinced? Don't tell me you want me to apologize to you?" As he spoke, Chen Shixin fearlessly put his face in front of Zhuowen. His eyes were full of provocation. Slap. Zhuowen slapped Chen Shixin to the ground and said coldly, "You're wrong. I want you to kneel on the ground and kowtow to me in apology." Chen Shixin was completely dazed. He fell head first at Zhuowen's feet. He roared angrily, trying to get up. Unfortunately, what greeted him was Zhuowen's right foot mercilessly stepping on him. Chapter 2902. Elder Zhuowen exerted a little force with his foot and Chen Shixin screamed as he lay on the ground, twitching. His eyes rolled back and he was on the verge of death. "How dare you attack our young master? You're courting death." The two middle-aged men following behind Chen Shixin also came back to their senses. They roared angrily and turned into two black bolts of lightning that attacked Zhuowen from both sides. "Brother Ma, be careful." Sun Ruoyu's beautiful eyes were filled with worry when she saw the two middle-aged men joining forces to attack Zhuowen. Just as she was about to intervene, she heard two loud slaps. Slap. Soon after, Sun Ruoyu was dumbstruck as she watched Zhuowen casually slap the two middle-aged men to the ground, causing them to fall flat on their faces. Sun Ruoyu was shocked. She had previously checked Zhuowen's aura and found that this scarred young man was only a Heavenly Dao Master. The two middle-aged men were peak Heavenly Dao Masters and were considered experts with a good reputation in the Giant Spirit sect. However, they were knocked down by two casual slaps from the young man in front of her. But soon, Sun Ruoyu's beautiful eyes shone brightly. She knew that the old sect master's divination was not wrong. He had chosen the right person. Although the cultivation of the young man in front of her was not very high, his strength was beyond her expectations. Even she would not have been able to easily deal with two powerhouses of the same level. But in the hands of this young man, it was done so effortlessly. Watch where you're going in the future. Don't bite anyone you see. If you bite the wrong person, you'll end up like this. Zhuowen hooked Chen Shixin's abdomen with his right foot. With a light force, Chen Shixin flew out like a dead dog and crashed into a nearby plate. "Young master!" The two middle-aged men who were slapped in the face by Zhuowen saw Chen Shixin being kicked away. They endured the injuries in their bodies and rushed over to catch Chen Shixin. At this moment, Chen Shixin's eyes rolled back and he was foaming at the mouth. He had already fallen unconscious. "How dare you? Young master is Elder Chen's son and you dare to hit him? Are you tired of living?" One of the servants shouted at Zhuowen, his eyes spitting fire. "I think you're tired of living." Zhuowen waved his right hand in the air, and the clamoring servant was slapped to the ground again. He spat out a mouthful of broken teeth and blood, and his body twitched incessantly. "Do you also want to seek justice for your young master?" Zhuowen's gaze fell on another servant, and a chilling intent spread from his eyes. The servant hurriedly knelt down and begged for mercy, repeatedly saying that he didn't dare. What a joke, this guy in front of them was definitely someone who feared nothing. Now that they were no match for him, he naturally didn't dare to act rashly. However, he also knew that since this person hit Chen Shixin, there would naturally be someone to deal with him. After all, Chen Shixin was Chen Yuanshui's son. And Chen Yuanshui was the #1 expert in the sect. Now there were too many cultivators in the sect who wanted to curry favor with Chen Yuanshui. As long as Chen Shixin's matter spread, there would naturally be someone to deal with this guy who didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Get lost. Zhuowen had just entered the giant spirit sect and didn't want to make a big deal out of it, so he didn't go too far. After getting Zhuowen's permission, the two servants supported Chen Shixin, who was still rolling his eyes, and left the place in a hurry. Brother Ma, I'm afraid you're in trouble. That Chen Shixin is Chen Yuanshui's son, and Chen Yuanshui's power in the sect is huge. Now that he has lost my grandfather's restraint, he has the tendency to cover the sky with one hand. Sun Ruoyu's beautiful eyes revealed a worried expression. Zhuowen smiled faintly and said, "Didn't Miss Ruoyu want me to sit on the position of sect master? I think Chen Yuanshui's faction doesn't like me very much. Are you sure you can help me ascend to the position of sect master?" Sun Ruoyu's beautiful eyes revealed a firm look, and she nodded heavily. "Brother Ma, you can rest assured that I will do what I say. Before my grandfather passed away, he gave me the sect master's token for safekeeping. As long as you have the sect master's token, you are the sect master of the giant spirit sect." Zhuowen nodded and didn't care. He knew that if Chen Yuanshui really coveted the position of sect master of the giant spirit sect, he would definitely not care too much about the sect master's token. Of course, Zhuowen naturally didn't care about Chen Yuanshui. In the insignificant giant spirit sect, even the old sect master Zhuowen didn't particularly care, let alone Chen Yuanshui, who was weaker than the old sect master. Seeing Zhuowen calm and composed, Sun Ruoyu's beautiful eyes revealed a curious look, and she couldn't help but ask, "Brother Ma, Chen Yuanshui is the second strongest expert in our giant spirit sect. He is infinitely close to the second step of Tao confirmation. Are you not afraid?" Afraid? The word afraid really doesn't exist in my dictionary. Miss Ruoyu, take me to see the old sect master first, Zhuowen said lightly. Sun Ruoyu looked deeply at the young man in front of her, and couldn't help but be infected by the strong confidence exuding from the latter. She nodded heavily and led Zhuowen to the sect master's hall. It had to be said that the sect master's hall was very magnificent. Although it was a little shabby, it was still difficult to conceal the vicissitudes of life that the hall revealed. However, at this time, there were more than 10 cultivators with powerful auras guarding outside the sect master's hall. Among them, the leader was an old man with a hooked nose. When the old man with a hooked nose saw Zhuowen and Sun Ruoyu coming from afar, his pair of shady eyes narrowed and revealed a playful smile. Sun Ruoyu walked to the front of the sect master's hall. When she saw the dozen cultivators guarding outside the hall, her pretty face instantly darkened. She looked at the old man with a hooked nose and said coldly, "Elder Du, what is the meaning of this?" The old man with a hooked nose named Elder Du chuckled and said, "Miss Ruoyu, you are really filial. You've come to see the old sect master again. We were sent here by Elder Chen. After all, the old sect master's body is very important. Naturally, we have to guard it well to prevent any malicious people from doing anything extreme to the old sect master's body." Elder Du didn't care about Sun Ruoyu's questioning. Instead, he waved his hand at the cultivators guarding the door behind him and said, "Step aside and let Miss Ruoyu in." After giving his instructions, Elder Du very elegantly gestured for Sun Ruoyu to enter. Although Sun Ruoyu was unhappy with Chen Yuanshui's unauthorized arrangement, she didn't say anything and walked straight into the hall. Zhuowen followed behind Sun Ruoyu, but when he passed by Elder Du, the latter stretched out his right hand and stopped Zhuowen. "Little brother, I see that you are a stranger. If you are not a member of our sect, then get lost." Chapter 2903. Making things difficult. Sun Ruoyu turned around, her beautiful eyes filled with anger. She scolded, "Elder Du, what do you mean by this? Brother Ma is my friend and also the candidate appointed by my grandfather. He's the future sect master. How dare you?" Elder Du looked surprised. He looked at Zhuan from head to toe and sneered. A piece of trash, that's the heavenly Tao master? Miss Ruoyu, it's not that I don't believe in the heavenly divination technique, but I think the old sect master made a mistake. If such a piece of trash becomes our sect master, it will only bring us into the fire pit. Elder Chen Yuanshui is the most suitable candidate. He is not far from the second step of Tao confirmation and can break through at any time. As long as our giant spirit sect has a Heaven's Mandate powerhouse, we will not decline and will continue to prosper. Speaking of this, Elder Du's tone became very rude. He continued, Miss Ruoyu, you're too obsessed with the heavenly divination technique. Just like the old sect master, that thing is illusory in my opinion. It's because you've been obsessed with the heavenly divination technique that the Great Spirit sect has become what it is now. Sun Ruoyu was very angry and looked at Elder Du in disbelief. She didn't expect Elder Du to have such thoughts. Elder Du, please pay attention to your words. The heavenly divination technique is the foundation of our Great Spirit sect. It's a powerful technique passed down from generation to generation. Before Sun Ruoyu could finish, she was immediately interrupted by Elder Du. Miss Ruoyu, if you weren't the granddaughter of the old sect master, I would have taught you a lesson right now. Let me ask you, if the heavenly divination technique is so magical, why has our Great Spirit sect declined to its current state? We've always placed our hopes on the old sect master, hoping that he could make our Great Spirit sect rise again. But we've been disappointed again and again. We've had enough. What bullshit heavenly divination technique? What bullshit heavenly destined successor? Everything is bullshit. Do you only believe in what's in front of me? I don't believe in that illusory destiny. The more Elder Du spoke, the more agitated he became and shouted at Sun Ruoyu. Sun Ruoyu's pretty face turned pale. She couldn't help but take a few steps back and murmured, Is that what you think? It's not just me. All the brothers in the sect think the same. We've had enough of the old sect master. It's best that he's dead now. We don't need to bother the old sect master with his so-called heavenly divination to choose the sect master. We'll choose the true successor ourselves. Elder Chen Yuanshui is the best candidate for the next sect master. Miss Ruoyu, you don't have to interfere in this matter. You're still too young and don't know anything. If we let you choose the successor based on your personality, it will only lead the giant spirit sect into the abyss. After Elder Du finished speaking, the dozen or so cultivators also echoed in unison as they looked at Sun Ruoyu coldly. Sun Ruoyu was in a daze. She did not expect that the disciples and elders of the sect would hold such a deep grudge against her grandfather. With a soft sigh, Sun Ruoyu seemed to have lost her vitality. She looked at Zhuan, who was stopped by Elder Du, and said with a bitter smile, Brother Ma, I'm really sorry. I didn't expect that my grandfather and I would be criticized and opposed by so many people in the sect. I've implicated you this time. With that, Sun Ruoyu looked at Elder Du and said faintly, I'll leave the matter of the sect master's succession to you, but this is my friend. Let him go. Seeing that Sun Ruoyu had given in, Elder Du's face showed a smug look. He glanced at Zhuan disdainfully and said arrogantly, Leave? Miss Ruoyu, didn't the old sect master say that the young man with 2 scars on his face is the true successor? Since the old sect master has divined the successor, there must be something extraordinary about him. In order to prove that the old sect master was wrong, I'll destroy the successor that the old sect master has divined today. The moment Elder Du saw Zhuan, he had already guessed that the latter should be the cultivator that the old sect master had mentioned before he passed away. Chen Yu, go and meet this destined successor. Elder Du crossed his arms in front of his chest, took a few steps back, and sneered. Yes. A young man in blue walked out from the dozen or so cultivators at the entrance of the main hall. With a clang, he drew a sharp divine sword from his back. With a murderous look in his eyes, He took a step forward and charged at Zhuowen like a flying immortal. The young man in blue used a killing move as soon as he made his move. Obviously, he wanted to kill Zhuowen with one move. Sun Ruoyu stomped her feet in anger and wanted to step forward to stop him, but she was stopped by two cultivators with sharp eyes and agile hands. Zhuowen had been watching quietly. Now that he saw that Elder Du wanted to use him as a target, a sneer appeared at the corner of his mouth. Seeing that Zhuowen could still laugh at this time, the young man in blue could not help but mock. "You're about to die, and you can still laugh." "About to die?" Zhuowen retorted. He slowly stretched out his right hand and pressed it in the air. Then, a miraculous scene appeared. The blue-clothed young man, who was holding a divine sword and whose entire body was radiating light, looked like a flying immortal. Before he could even reach Zhuowen, he inexplicably fell to the ground from midair. On the ground where the young man in blue was, there was a palm print that was bigger than the young man in blue. The young man in blue struggled to get up, but it was to no avail. It was as if he was being suppressed by some kind of powerful force, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. This unexpected scene left everyone dumbfounded. The young man in blue, who had been graceful just a moment ago, inexplicably fell from the air and lay on the ground like a dead dog, vomiting blood. Zhuowen slowly walked to the young man in blue, lifted his chin with the tip of his foot, and said indifferently, "You just said that I'm about to die. You seem to have said the opposite." The young man in blue was extremely frightened. He did not know why a strange and terrifying force suddenly appeared in his body and suppressed him, but he soon understood that this strange force must be the work of this young man in front of him. I. The young man in blue trembled all over and could not speak clearly. "How dare you?" Elder Du was the first to react. With a stomp of his right foot, a terrifying ripple burst out from the bottom of his foot and spread out in all directions. Elder Du instantly disappeared from where he stood and reappeared before Zhuowen. "Go to hell!" Elder Du roared. His right palm burst out a blazing white light and smashed toward Zhuowen's heart. Elder Du was at the peak of Daoyuan Master. If this palm hit him, even an expert at the early stage of Hunyuan Master would be seriously injured. Boom! Elder Du's palm finally smashed into Zhuowen's heart. A terrifying white light burst out like a blazing sun. The dozens of people in the hall all narrowed their eyes because they could not see what was going on in the white light. "This guy is too arrogant. He has attracted Elder Du's attention. This time, he is doomed. I saw Elder Du smashing that guy's heart with his palm. I'm afraid that guy will be skinned even if he doesn't die." Chapter 2904. Secretary of Heaven telling Sun Ruoyu's face turned deathly pale. She had also seen the last scene, and she regretted bringing Zhuowen here. "Brother Ma, it's all my fault for bringing you here." Sun Ruoyu sighed in her heart, full of guilt. The white light soon faded, and everyone was shocked to find that the scarred young man was still standing there like a javelin, motionless like a mountain. Elder Du's right palm was indeed pressed on the scarred young man's chest, but the young man didn't seem to have suffered any serious injuries. Elder Du's pupils shrank to the size of needles. He slowly raised his head and saw a young man with 2 scars on his face. Then, he saw a smile on the young man's face, but it was a smile like a demon's, which made Elder Du's heart tremble. Retreat. Elder Du's heart was filled with fear. He felt that this young man was definitely a monster. His full force blow landed on the young man's chest, but the young man didn't seem to have suffered any injuries. Was he still human? "Run after hitting me? There's no such thing in this world." Zhuowen smiled faintly and threw out a slap. It was so fast that it landed directly on Elder Du's old face. Slap! A crisp slap rang out. Elder Du was hit so hard that he spun several times in the air and fell heavily on the ground. His old face was swollen beyond recognition. Looking at this scene, everyone felt dizzy. What the hell is going on? Is this young man a freak? Elder Du's full force attack landed on his vitals, yet he is completely fine. What kind of terrifying physical body does he have to be able to do that? Elder Du thought. Elder Du was knocked to the ground by the slap, but he was still conscious. He knew that he had to escape. The young man in front of him was a freak. How could he have such a terrifying physical body? He was simply bullying others. Unfortunately, as soon as Elder Du retreated, Zhuo Wen's right foot swept over and kicked Elder Du's cheek, sending him flying into the air. When Elder Du reached the height in front of Zhuo Wen slapped Elder Du's other cheek. Like a spinning top, Elder Du started to spin again. In the end, it crashed heavily beside Zhuo Wen's feet, twitching incessantly as if all the bones in its body had been shattered. The surrounding people kept quiet out of fear as they watched this scene dumbfoundedly. Sun Ruoyu was the most astonished of them all. Previously, Zhuo Wen had easily defeated 2 peak subordinates of the Heavenly Tao Master. She had already been sufficiently astonished and felt that Zhuo Wen was very amazing. Now, Zhuo Wen had shown his strength again. He had defeated Elder Du, who was at the peak of Daoyuan Master. Even his parents couldn't recognize him. Sun Ruoyu was no longer surprised. Instead, she was horrified. So powerful. Grandpa's art of divination was right. This person can definitely bring our giant spirit sect to the peak. Sun Ruoyu's beautiful eyes shone brightly. She was even more certain that the young man in front of her was the destined master of their giant spirit sect. Casually throwing Elder Du aside like a dead dog, Zhuo Wen strode to the entrance of the main hall. He looked at the dozen or so cultivators who were still in a daze at the entrance and said indifferently, "Are you guarding here planning to avenge Elder Du? Sir, you must be joking. You are so wise and powerful. How dare we go against you? Sir, you misunderstand. How can we dare to take revenge?" The dozen or so cultivators changed their expressions very quickly. They had flattering smiles on their faces and lowered their bodies very much. "Since you don't plan to avenge Elder Du, why don't you scram?" Zhuo Wen said coldly. As soon as these words came out, the dozen or so cultivators guarding the entrance of the main hall dispersed in a hubbub. They didn't dare to stay here any longer. The young man in front of them was too powerful. They didn't see how badly Elder Du had been beaten. They didn't want to repeat the same mistake. Sun Ruoyu looked at the young man in front of her with complicated eyes and suddenly asked, "Brother Ma, are you really the Heavenly Tao Master?" Zhuo Wen smiled slightly and said, "Yes, but I have cultivated the body refinement technique. The strength of my physical body has actually surpassed my own realm." Hearing this, Sun Ruoyu felt relieved. Zhuo Wen's terrifying physical body had indeed shocked her. She didn't doubt him. "Brother Ma, I'm afraid Qin Yuan Shui will soon know that you beat Qin Shixin and Elder Du when that time comes. He will probably come back to denounce you. If you stay here, I'm afraid," Sun Ruoyu said worriedly. "Miss Ruoyu, don't worry. Qin Yuan Shui is just a clown. He's not worth mentioning. However, the first 7 days of the old sect master's death are more important. During these 7 days, we have to make sure that the main hall is quiet," Zhuo Wen said with a faint smile. Sun Ruoyu shook her head and said, "I'm afraid that's not very likely. That Qin Yuan Shui didn't take my grandfather seriously. I'm afraid he would even dare to barge into the main hall." "Don't worry, Miss Ruoyu. Leave it to me," Zhuo Wen grinned. With a wave of his sleeve, he took out several array flags and began to set up a killing array around the main hall. This time, he was setting up the sword and saber absolute killing array. It was a peak chaotic grade killing array. With Zhuo Wen's current level of array Dao, it was too easy for him to set up such a chaotic grade killing array. Zhuo Wen could actually set up a more powerful killing array, but he didn't plan to do so. Now that he was still a fugitive, if he revealed too much of his array Dao skills, he might be exposed. However, just in case, Zhuowen secretly set up a Heavenly Fate grade killing array in the Sword and Saber Absolute killing array. Once the Sword and Saber Absolute killing array was broken, the Heavenly Fate grade killing array would be activated. After setting up the killing array, Zhuowen returned to the entrance of the main hall. Sun Ruoyu looked at Zhuowen in surprise and said, "Brother Ma, you're also a God Array Dao master?" "Haha, I've dabbled in it before, but it's not that profound. However, it's not a problem for me to set up an ordinary killing array," Zhuowen said. Sun Ruoyu didn't think too much about it. She simply said, "Oh," and led Zhuowen into the main hall. The main hall was very spacious. There were black cloths and white strips hanging inside, and candles were lit on both sides. It was filled with a solemn and dignified atmosphere. Behind the black cloths in the middle of the main hall was a black wooden coffin. Inside the coffin was the deceased sect master. Zhuowen looked at the sect master in the coffin. He was certain that this old man was the owner of the Eyes of the Void that appeared above the valley back then. With a light sigh, Zhuowen put his hands together and bowed 3 times to the sect master. He silently apologized in his heart. From Sun Ruoyu's words, although he knew that the old sect master did not have long to live, Zhuowen's responsibility for hastening the old sect master's death by activating the power of thunder to destroy the Eyes of the Void. "Brother Ma, this is the sect master's token. With this sect master's token, you will be the sect master of our giant spirit sect in the future. Also, after becoming the sect master, you will be qualified to comprehend our giant spirit sect's most mysterious secret of Tao law and heavenly divination." Sun Ruoyu handed a black token with a metallic luster to Zhuowen. Her beautiful eyes were filled with anticipation. "Miss Ruoyu, I promise you that as long as I'm in the giant spirit sect, I will definitely develop the giant spirit sect. I will not treat the giant spirit sect unfairly," Zhuowen said solemnly. Chapter 2905. Chen Xiongzhuowen took the Divine Divination Secretary with a curious look in his eyes. He had heard about the Divine Divination Secretary from Sun Ruoyu many times and held it in high esteem. Moreover, he was very interested in the mysterious energy from the Eye of the Void that he encountered outside the valley. At that time, he could feel that the mysterious energy was extraordinary. It was faintly above the heavenly Tao. He knew that it was the aura of the old sect master when he used the divine divination technique. Now that Sun Ruoyu handed the Divine Divination Secretary to him, he was very surprised and moved. This meant that Sun Ruoyu trusted him completely. "Thank you, Miss Ruoyu." Zhuowen cupped his fists and retreated to a corner of the hall. He began to flip open the Divine Divination Secretary and silently comprehend it. However, when Zhuowen opened the Divine Divination Secretary, he couldn't help but be stunned. This was because the Divine Divination Secretary was completely blank. There was nothing inside. Zhuowen flipped from the beginning to the end, hoping to see some traces of black and white word. Unfortunately, all he saw was white paper. Why is this thing the same as the True Alchemy Array record? It starts with a wordless heavenly book. Zhuowen was speechless. He felt that he was quite unlucky. Every time he wanted to comprehend such a powerful Tao technique, he would always encounter wordless heavenly books. "Brother Ma, you need to use the sect master's token to see the specific contents of the Divine Divination Secretary." Just as Zhuowen was feeling depressed, Sun Ruoyu's voice came from inside. When Zhuowen heard this, he immediately took out the sect master's token and placed it beside the Divine Divination Secretary. A black light was emitted from the token. This black light entered the Divine Divination Secretary and actually revealed black word. Zhuowen's expression brightened. He began to flip open the first page of the Divine Divination Secretary and carefully studied the content. "Fate depends on fate, fate depends on the creation of the heavens. Calculate the world, know the weather of fortune and misfortune, The more Zhuowen read, the tighter his frown became. The contents of the divine divination secretary were too obscure and profound. He only understood half of the contents on the first page. However, Zhuowen himself was a formation Dao master and a pill refiner. His comprehension wasn't low either. He endured the boredom and flipped through the contents page by page. When Zhuowen finished reading the last page, the Pangu flag, which was hidden deep in his soul, suddenly let out a clear buzzing noise. Then, Zhuowen found that the contents of the heaven-calculating secretary were being replayed in his soul by the Pangu flag in the form of images. At first, Zhuowen could only understand half of what was written in the Secretary of Divination. But now, with the Pangu banner showing the contents of the Secretary of Divination in the form of images, Zhuowen was able to understand the contents much more easily. Zhuowen knew that the Pangu banner was helping him comprehend the heavenly divination secret. Furthermore, Zhuowen thought deeper. The fact that the Secretary of Heavenly Divination could cause the Pangu banner to react, it was obvious that its origin was not simple. It should be an incredible Dao technique. Thinking of this, Zhuowen's eyes were full of fire. Since he knew that the Secretary of Heavenly Divination was extraordinary, he was even more eager to learn this Dao technique. While Zhuowen was comprehending the Secretary of Heavenly Divination in the Sect Master's Hall, there was an uproar in the giant spirit sect. The rumor that the young man brought back by Sun Ruoyu was the successor of the sect master with the heavenly divination technique spread like wildfire. Moreover, this young man was extremely bold. As soon as he entered the sect, he beat up Chen Yuanshui's son. This was not enough. He even broke into the sect master's hall and almost crippled Elder Du, who was arranged by Chen Yuanshui outside the hall. His actions could be said to be ruthless. For a time, this young man became a wicked, ruthless, and evil person in the sect. All the cultivators in the sect were resisting the young man brought back by Sun Ruoyu. They would never allow such a person to become the sect master of their giant spirit sect. Chen Yuanshui even announced that he planned to go to the sect master's hall to drag out the arrogant young man and bring him to justice. Chen Yuanshui's declaration made most of the cultivators in the sect clap their hands and cheer. They felt very satisfied. The next day, an old man led a group of people to the entrance of the sect master's hall. Behind this old man, there were many cultivators. These were all cultivators of the sect. Of course, most of them were here to watch the show. Why didn't Elder Chen Yuanshui come today? Didn't he say that he was going to drag out that arrogant young man? Didn't you hear? Elder Chen Yuanshui seemed to have comprehended something and suddenly went into seclusion yesterday. It is said that he is about to break through to the heavenly fate master realm. Wow, really? If Elder Chen Yuanshui can successfully break through, it will be great news for our giant spirit sect. Isn't that so? If Elder Chen successfully breaks through, the position of the sect master of our giant spirit sect will naturally be his. As for the young man who was divined by the old sect master, the cultivators who were watching the show followed behind from afar. They were discussing very lively. Chen Yuanshui indeed didn't come. This time, it was Elder Chen Xiong who came. Chen Xiong was Chen Yuanshui's cousin. His talent was also not bad. His cultivation was already at the peak of the primordial chaos master realm. In the giant spirit sect, he was only slightly inferior to Chen Yuanshui. This time, Chen Xiong brought all the elders in the sect. There were a total of 7 people. Except for Chen Yuanshui, almost all the elders in the sect were here. They were all here to denounce Chen Yuanshui. At this moment, the door of the sect hall was slowly opened and a beautiful figure walked out. This beautiful figure immediately attracted everyone's attention because this beautiful figure was none other than the old sect master's only granddaughter, Sun Ruoyu. Chen Xiong saw Sun Ruoyu at a glance and snorted coldly. "Miss Ruoyu, do you know your crime?" Sun Ruoyu's beautiful eyes were calm, but she was a little nervous. She didn't expect that almost the entire sect would come here to oppose the successor she brought back. What crime did I commit? Sun Ruoyu said seriously. Haha. You brought back an unrelated outsider, and condoned this outsider to beat up our sect's disciples and elders. Tell me, are you not guilty? Chen Xiong sneered and pointed at the two figures behind him. These two figures were one old and one young. The young one's cheeks were swollen like a pig's head, and he was supported by two servants. The old one was even more miserable. He couldn't even stand up and was carried over by 4 servants on a stretcher. His old face was even more swollen than the young one. If this old man didn't try to blink his eyes, others would think that this old guy didn't have eyes. Many cultivators who were watching the show couldn't help but laugh when they saw Chen Shixin and Du Yu's miserable appearance. Sun Ruoyu covered her lips with her hand as she tried her best to stifle her laughter. However, her actions only made Chen Shixin and Du Yu feel even more humiliated. Their mouths were muffled, but no one knew what they were saying. Miss Ruoyu, you can still laugh now? These two people were done by the young man you brought back. Today, you must hand over that little bastard. Chen Xiong's expression was ugly as he said coldly. Chapter 2906. Your grandpa ma humph. Whether it's self-defense or not, anyone who beats up our people in the Great Spirit Sect is looking down on our Great Spirit Sect. This kind of person must be severely punished. Otherwise, anyone can come to our Great Spirit Sect to shit in the future. Chen Xiong sneered and walked step by step towards the sect master's hall. Elder Chen, I say you'd better stop. Brother Ma has already set up a killing array in the sect master's hall. If anything happens to you later, don't blame me for not warning you. Sun Ruoyu warned. Chen Xiong laughed and said, Oh, you even set up a large array. Are you trying to fool a 3-year-old child? That young man is not old. Even if he has learned the array Dao, I'm afraid he can only set up the simplest array. I'm afraid he can't even reach the heavenly Dao level. Using this thing to scare me, hee. With that, Chen Xiong took a step forward, ignoring Sun Ruoyu's warning, and rushed directly to the front of the sect master's hall. Boom! Instantly, a formless ripple spread out from the surroundings of the sect leader's hall, accompanied by a strong killing intent. It surged over like a raging wave, completely engulfing Chen Xiong's entire being. Clang! 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 In an instant, sword shadows appeared around the sect master's hall. Like a storm, they were densely packed and terrifying. All of them greeted Chen Xiong alone. Chen Xiong's pupils shrank, but his reaction was not slow. He immediately took out his life artifact and burst out with all the strength in his body to resist the surrounding sword shadows. However, there were too many saber lights and sword shadows in the array. Chen Xiong resisted for a while and immediately became exhausted. Moreover, the saber lights and sword shadows in the array became even more ferocious. Damn, it's actually a chaos-grade killing array. How could that guy set up such a high-level array? Chen Xiong cursed as he resisted the surrounding sword shadows. A trace of regret rose in his heart. He thought that Sun Ruoyu was joking, but he didn't expect it to be true. He dug a hole for himself and jumped into it himself. The moment Chen Xiong was trapped in the array, the 6 elders behind Chen Xiong hurriedly retreated. They stared blankly at the trapped and battered Chen Xiong. They also realized that the formation around the sect master's hall was not simple. It could actually trap a peak expert like Chen Xiong. Damn, it can't be. That young man is really a powerful divine array master. If he can trap Elder Chen Xiong, it must be at least a primordial array master. I really misjudged him this time. It seems that the young man that senior sister's son brought back is not a simple character. He is actually such a powerful divine array master. Our Great Spirit Sect just happens to lack a powerful formation master. If we can retain such a powerful formation master, it will definitely be beneficial to our Great Spirit Sect. Everyone discussed animatedly, and their impression of the mysterious young man began to change. Rumble! Suddenly, a terrifying bolt of lightning emerged from the formation amidst the flashes of light and sword, striking Chen Seong directly. A scream sounded, accompanied by a pungent burnt smell. Chen Seong, who was inside the formation, was completely charred black. Damn it, there is actually a thunder formation hidden in the formation. It's a dirty trick. Chen Seong roared furiously and began to curse the young man who set up the formation. Creak. The door of the sect master's hall was opened again. A young man with a hideous scar on his face slowly walked out of the door and said lazily, "Which dog is barking outside so early in the morning? It's so noisy." The moment the young man walked out, he immediately attracted everyone's attention. There are 2 scars on his face. He really is the successor that the old sect master divined. This person is so young. Is he really the array master who set up the primordial array master? In the formation, Chen Seong, who was constantly screaming from being struck by lightning, also noticed the young man who had just walked out. "You are the person that Miss Royu brought back. If you have the ability, fight me face to face. What are you after setting up a formation to trick me?" Chen Seong's face was ferocious as he shouted loudly. Chen Seong was really angry. He had promised Chen Yuanxue that he would teach the young man a lesson. However, he did not expect that before he even saw the young man, he would be in such a sorry state because of the formation. "What do you mean by the person that Miss Royu brought back?" "I am Ma Yujie, your grandpa Ma. You have lived for so long, how can you be so uneducated? Didn't your parents teach you when you were young?" Zhuowen put his hands behind his back and looked at Chen Seong indifferently. He had no intention of making a move. "Little bastard, come out if you have the guts. Why are you being a coward?" Chen Seong was furious. Zhuowen narrowed his eyes and said coldly, "I told you to call me Grandpa Ma, but you didn't listen. Looks like you are itching for a beating. This little bit of lightning might not be enough. Let me add some more." With that, Zhuowen waved his sleeve and a formation flag flew out and landed in the formation eye. Sizzle! Sizzle! Instantly, the formation eye erupted with terrifying lightning liquid. The lightning liquid was like a wave, rolling up hundreds of meters and then falling toward Chen Seong. Everyone was stunned. The lightning liquid in front of them was too terrifying. Even if Chen Seong was at the peak of Hunyuan Lord, he would be badly injured if he was hit by the lightning liquid. Chen Seong was also scared out of his wits. He immediately admitted defeat and hurriedly said, "Grandpa Ma, I was wrong. Please stop. This lightning liquid was too terrifying." Even he himself wasn't sure if he could withstand this terrifying lightning liquid. Unfortunately, Zhuowen was indifferent. In the end, the lightning liquid drowned Chen Seong. Only a shrill scream was heard. Then, there was no sound at all. The lightning liquid gradually dissipated, and a figure in a sorry state flew out of the array, smashing fiercely in front of the 6 elders behind him. This was a human figure that was completely charred black. If it weren't for the broken divine artifact beside this charred black figure, the 6 elders wouldn't have been able to recognize that this charred black figure was Chen Seong. Is there anyone else who is not convinced? If you're not convinced, then feel free to bring it on. "I'm standing right here," Zhuowen said calmly with his hands behind his back. As soon as these words came out, the 6 elders' eyes twitched, and they quickly shook their heads. What a joke! Even the strongest among them, Elder Chen Seong, had been tortured into a half-dead state by the formation. They would only be worse if they went in. Unless they were tired of living, they wouldn't go in. Zhuowen looked down at the silent crowd and knew that he should not be intimidating them at this moment. After all, he wanted to become the sect master of the giant spirit sect. Since he was the sect master, he naturally could not always use tough means. At least let these cultivators in the sect know that he could bring benefits to them as the sect master, and let the sect develop. Chapter 2907. Zhuowen took out a pitch-black token and said indifferently, "This is the sect master's token. Miss Sun Ryu gave it to me and said that I am the successor chosen by your old sect master using the heavenly divination technique. I know your Great Spirit sect and know that your Great Spirit sect does use the heavenly divination technique to choose a sect master. Since the old sect master has chosen me, I will respectfully accept and become the sect master." Zhuowen's voice was very soft, but it reached everyone's ears. Most of the cultivators frowned slightly. They felt that the young man in front of them was too self-righteous. He directly admitted that he was the next sect master and didn't ask for their opinion at all. "I know that everyone doesn't know me well enough, and you feel that my sudden announcement is very abrupt. However, there is one thing I can be sure of. If I sit on the sect master's seat, it will be your Great Spirit sect's blessing." Zhuowen's words immediately caused an uproar. Many disciples in the sect were very dissatisfied and felt that this child was too arrogant. Sun Ryu also looked at Zhuowen worriedly. She also felt that Zhuowen was too straightforward. Zhuowen didn't care and continued, "Everyone has seen my level of Array Dao. To be honest, I am a Heavenly Fate grade Array Dao master." As soon as these words came out, the originally noisy crowd suddenly became much quieter. Heavenly Fate grade Array Dao masters were very popular even in Dao Palace level forces. Their Great Spirit sect was only a Dao sect level force, so they naturally didn't have the resources to invite such an Array Dao master. In addition, I am also a Heavenly Fate grade Pill master. Zhuowen didn't wait for everyone to come back to their senses when he released another piece of heavy news, causing everyone to faint. Array Dao and Alchemy Dao dual cultivation, and actually reached the Heavenly Fate grade. This was absolutely abnormal. Sun Ryu also covered her cherry lips with her jade-like hand and looked at Zhuowen in disbelief. She didn't expect the young man in front of her to be a Heavenly Fate grade Pill master. This was too much of a genius. Of course, if it's just me saying it, no one will believe it. I have quite a few Heaven's Mandate pills here, and all of them are of the highest quality. If anyone is willing to recognize me as the sect master and join my faction, the Heaven's Mandate pills will belong to them. Zhuowen took out a medicinal pill. The pill veins on its surface were as bright as the sun. It floated above his hand, and from time to time, thunderous booms could be heard. The pill veins are suffused with gold, and the sound of the pill is like thunder. This is indeed the sign of a top-grade Heaven's Mandate pill. Everyone's eyes were red with envy. One after another, they volunteered to admit that Zhuowen was the sect master. Furthermore, they were willing to sacrifice their lives to serve Zhuowen. All of them had thrown away their moral integrity. This was especially true for the 6 elders who had followed Chen Xiyong from the beginning. They had completely lost their moral integrity and were all expressing their loyalty to Zhuowen. There were even a few elders who punched and kicked the charred Chen Xiyong to show that they were willing to be on the same side as Zhuowen. With the elders taking the lead, the group of cultivators behind them followed suit and kicked Chen Xiyong without any restraint. The pitiful Chen Xiyong was already half dead from being struck by lightning. Now that he was being kicked and punched by everyone, he almost fainted. Zhuowen's hands pressed down on the crowd, and they immediately quieted down. Zhuowen pointed at the 6 elders and said, "The 6 of you, come here." The 6 elders were a bit afraid and didn't dare to step forward. After all, there was a powerful formation in the sect's main hall. "If I tell you to come here, then come here. The formation here is under my control, so it won't hurt you. Also, don't tell me you don't want the Heaven's Mandate pills?" Zhuowen said with displeasure. The 6 elders were helpless. In the end, they couldn't resist the temptation of the Heaven's Mandate pills and walked to the entrance of the sect master's main hall. After finding that the formation at the entrance didn't move against them, they all let out a sigh of relief. Their hearts relaxed a lot, and they strode in front of Zhuowen. "Swear to the heavens that you will serve me as the sect master, and that you will only listen to me in the future. These 6 special-grade Heaven's Mandate pills are yours," Zhuowen said indifferently. He could see that the 6 elders were all Lord Chaos Origin cultivators. The temptation of the Heaven's Mandate pills was too great for them. After all, with the help of the special-grade Heaven's Mandate pills, their chances of breaking through to the Heaven's Mandate realm would be much higher. Zhuowen originally thought that the 6 elders would hesitate for a long time and weigh the pros and cons. But in reality, the 6 elders straightforwardly swore to the heavens and then smiled flatteringly at Zhuowen, asking for the Heaven's Mandate pills. This made Zhuowen's jaw drop. "Where's your integrity? Don't you have integrity?" Zhuowen facebombed, took out 6 special-grade Heaven's Mandate pills, and handed them to the 6 elders. The 6 elders received the 6 special-grade Heaven's Mandate pills and were deeply grateful to Zhuowen. They almost knelt down and licked Zhuowen's boot. After the 6 elders left with the Heaven's Mandate pills, the cultivators below couldn't hold back. In fact, they also wanted a divine pill as a reward. After all, their Great Spirit sect had declined too much, and they had always been in short supply of pills. "If everyone swears to the heavens to be loyal to me, then each of you will receive a Tao-gathering pill." Zhuowen continued to speak, and the crowd below suddenly became excited. They all swore to the heavens to pledge their loyalty to Zhuowen. The Tao-gathering pill was a Chaos Origin divine pill. Its main function was to help cultivators comprehend the heavens faster and increase their cultivation speed. It was the most practical divine pill for first-step Tao-confirming cultivators. The Great Spirit sect also had this Tao-gathering pill, but the number was very limited. Only the upper echelons of the sect were qualified to use it. As for ordinary disciples, they could only laugh if they wanted to use it. Now that Zhuowen gave each of them a Tao-gathering pill, how could they not go crazy? The Tao-gathering pill was very important to these cultivators, but to Zhuowen it was not worth mentioning. After all, he was an eternal level peak alchemist. A mere Chaos Origin divine pill was really just a drizzle for him. Long live the sect master! Long live the sect master! After giving out all the Tao-gathering pills, Zhuowen was greeted by the cheers of everyone. Zhuowen was also a little surprised. This method of bribery actually went so smoothly, and there were basically no obstacles. QL11 In fact, what Zhuowen didn't know was that the Great Spirit sect was indeed in short supply of resources. Because of the lack of resources, many talented juniors had left the sect and joined other forces over the years. Now that Zhuowen came and generously provided medicinal pills, they naturally couldn't refuse. In addition, Zhuowen was a powerful heavenly mandate alchemist and array master. No one objected to Zhuowen becoming the sect master of the Great Spirit sect. After all, Zhuowen was much better than Chen Yuanshui. Not only could he enjoy the protection of a powerful array, but he could also get high-level divine pills to cultivate from time to time. Everyone disperse. After the 7th day of the old sect master's death, it will be the sect master's ascension ceremony. At that time, I hope everyone will come and support me. Zhuowen cupped his hands and said a polite sentence. Everyone hurriedly returned the salute and left the square with a happy smile. Ma. Grandpa Ma. Can you also give me a heavenly mandate pill? I swear. I will be loyal to you. A weak voice came. Zhuowen was startled. His gaze fell on the charred figure below the sect hall, and he said in surprise, "Yo! Elder Chen's life is quite tough. He can still speak so energetically. You'd better go back. This heavenly mandate pill is not something that animals can take." Chapter 2908. Fusion time flew by and 7 days passed in the blink of an eye. The old sect master's death also passed by smoothly. During this period of time, Chen Yuanshui had always been in closed-door cultivation. He did not know that Chen Xiyong and the others he had sent out had returned in defeat. Moreover, Zhuowen had turned the tables on them and made everyone in the sect obedient. Sun Ruoyu finally witnessed Zhuo Wen's wealth during this period of time. In order to help Sun Ruoyu break through from Heavenly Tao Lord to Tao Origin Lord, Zhuowen generously gave her a bottle of Tao Origin pills, more than 10 bottles of Tao Gathering pills, and a bottle of Heaven's Mandate pills. After all, the Giant Spirit sect was a Tao sect in name, and Sun Ruoyu was the old sect master's only granddaughter, so she didn't care too much about a bottle of Tao Origin pills. However, the Tao Gathering pill was different. This thing was a mixed yuan-level divine pill. Even their Giant Spirit sect didn't have many reserves of this level of pill. When the old sect master was in position, she had at most obtained a few Tao Gathering pills. Of course, Zhuowen generously gave out a Tao Gathering pill to every cultivator in the sect in front of the sect master's hall. At the very least, he gave out several tens of thousands of Tao Gathering pills. Sun Ruoyu wasn't surprised that Zhuowen took out more than 10 bottles of Tao Gathering pills. What surprised her was that Zhuowen also took out a bottle of Heaven's Mandate pills. Moreover, they were all top-grade Heaven's Mandate pills. One had to know that Zhuowen only took out 6 Heaven's Mandate pills to bribe the 6 elders in front of the sect master's hall. Although she knew that Zhuowen was a Heaven's Mandate grade alchemist, she also knew that even a Heaven's Mandate grade alchemist would have a high failure rate when refining a Heaven's Mandate pill. Moreover, the failure rate of a special grade Heaven's Mandate pill was even more terrifying. Now, Zhuowen took out a bottle of top-grade Heaven's Mandate pills for her. It could be said that he was truly rich. If Zhuowen didn't force this bottle of Heaven's Mandate pills to Sun Ruoyu, she would be too embarrassed to accept it. Inside the sect master's hall, Zhuowen slowly opened his eyes. He was sitting cross-legged on a praying mat with the Heaven Calculating Secret on his lap. For the past 7 days, Zhuowen had basically been studying the Heavenly Divination Secretary. With the help of the Pangu Banner, Zhuowen's perception increased very quickly. He quickly grasped the basics of the Heavenly Divination Secret. However, after gaining a preliminary understanding of the Heavenly Divination technique, Zhuowen discovered the profoundness of the Heavenly Divination technique. This was because this secret was related to the theory of fate. It was said that as long as one could comprehend this secret, they would be able to see through their own fate and truly transcend the shackles of the Heavenly Tao. They would be able to control their own fate and obtain great freedom. Controlling fate, Zhuowen's eyes were filled with confusion. Ever since he started cultivating, he had always thought that his fate was in his hands. However, the more he cultivated, the more he realized how insignificant he was. His fate seemed to be in his own hands, but he was actually still trapped under the shackles of the starry sky. As long as he was still in this starry sky, his fate was not completely in his own hands. Breaking the heavens is the true meaning of freedom, Zhuowen muttered to himself. His eyes were filled with determination. Breaking the heaven had always been a legendary realm. Even Pangu, the creator of this starry sky, couldn't truly break the heaven and transcend this starry sky to obtain the true freedom in the legends. Although I only have a superficial grasp of the Heavenly Divination technique, I can see a trace of the trajectory of fate and vaguely calculate my own fortune and misfortune. Zhuowen's eyes flashed with understanding. The Heavenly Divination technique was very magical. If he could comprehend it more deeply, he would be able to calculate his own fortune and misfortune. From there, he would be able to avoid disasters in advance. Of course, he could only calculate the general fortune and misfortune. As for the details, it was basically impossible. Moreover, while comprehending the Heavenly Divination secret, Zhuowen also understood the mysteries of fate. It was unfathomable. But at the same time, the traces of fate were inseparable from time and space. Zhuowen had once comprehended the space-time divine ability. At this moment, he also comprehended the mysteries of fate. He suddenly had an idea. If he combined the two mysterious powers of fate and space-time, would it make his space-time divine ability even more powerful? Zhuowen's character was to do what he thought without hesitation. He slowly stretched out his right hand and pointed his finger. Invisible ripples appeared around his body. The power of these ripples became more and more violent and terrifying. Finally, with a swoosh, a boundless sea appeared around Zhuowen. It was the space-time sea. The space-time sea completely submerged the sect master's hall. However, under Zhuowen's control, the sect master's hall was not destroyed by the space-time sea. Instead, it stood quietly at the bottom of the space-time sea like a relic. A dazzling purple sun rose from the sea in the distance. It was so dazzling. This phenomenon naturally attracted the attention of everyone in the Great Spirit sect, especially when they discovered the rising purple sun and the terrifying space-time sea below the purple sun. Everyone in the Great Spirit sect showed awe in their eyes. This power was so terrifying that it made them feel awe, and the idea of worship rose in their hearts. That's the sect master's hall. Could it be that this terrifying phenomenon was created by the sect master? Amazing. The sect master must be extraordinary to be able to create such a terrifying phenomenon. It seems that the old sect master's heavenly divination technique was right. He chose the right person this time. Yes, especially this new sect master is a heavenly mandate divine array master and a heavenly mandate alchemist. With such a multi-talented sect master, it's impossible for our Great Spirit sect not to rise. Many disciples in the sect had some guesses, and they admired the new sect master even more. Zhuowen naturally didn't care about the thoughts of those disciples. The moment he used the space-time divine art, the 5 fingers of his right hand moved and used the heavenly divination technique. Traces of fate appeared from the space-time sea. Then, Zhuowen was surprised to find that the boundless space-time sea was constantly shrinking, and finally shrank into a river. As for the purple sun directly above, it descended and fell into the river, dyeing the clear and transparent river purple. Under the fusion of the heavenly divination technique, the fate of the purple sun and the space-time sea were changed and merged into one, forming the short but mysterious purple river in front of him. Although the space-time divine arts phenomenon had shrunk countless times, the destructive power contained in the purple river was much stronger than the space-time sea at the beginning. Zhuowen's eyes were emotionless. The moment the heavenly divination technique was integrated into the space-time divine art, he had already felt that the two had a surprisingly consistent fit. Chapter 2909 Destiny Space-Time Zhuowen shook his sleeve, and the purple river dissipated. His eyes lit up and he smiled faintly. This will be the second divine art I've created, and it will also be the strongest. Since it's a combination of the space-time divine art and the power of destiny in the heavenly divination art, then this divine art shall be called the Destiny Space-Time Slaughter. Dong dong. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. Zhuowen opened the door and saw Sun Ruoyu looking at him strangely. "Brother Ma, were you in the room just now?" Sun Ruoyu asked hesitantly. "Oh, just now I was just trying out the ability I just created. I couldn't control it for a moment and it might have leaked out." Zhuowen smiled apologetically. Self-created ability? Sun Ruoyu's beautiful eyes widened, and she was very shocked. Generally, cultivators who could create their own abilities were basically geniuses among geniuses, monsters among monsters. According to Sun Ruoyu's knowledge, cultivators who could create their own abilities would definitely be earth-shattering figures in the future as long as they didn't die midway. Other than the old monster of the older generation whose cultivation was exceedingly high, Sun Ruoyu only knew that the head of the 5 great monsters, Yi Qidong, had created his own ability in the younger generation. As for the other 4 of the 5 great monsters, they didn't have such talent and ability. And this young man in front of her was actually able to create his own ability. Didn't that mean that this child's talent was already comparable to that number 1 monster, Ichidon? Thinking of this, Sun Ruoyu's eyes lit up. She was glad that her grandfather's heavenly divination technique was powerful, and she was even more glad that she found the right person. With such a genius becoming the sect master of their giant spirit sect, the rise of the giant spirit sect in the future was only a matter of time. Miss Ruoyu, why have you come to find me? Zhuowen asked in surprise. My grandfather's first 7 days have passed. Today, I'm looking for you to tell you about the sect master succession ceremony. I've arranged all the preparations for the ceremony with the 6 elders. We're just waiting for you to set a date. Sun Ruoyu said. Thank you for your hard work. Let's set the succession ceremony for tomorrow. Zhuowen nodded. After learning the art of divine divination, he had personally performed a divination for himself. He knew that if he were to force his way through the boundaries of the Corp sect, he would have a 90% chance of failure. However, staying in the giant spirit sect was actually very safe. As long as half a year passed, the top echelons of the 10 Absolutes Corp sect would basically head to the Star Wars battlefield. That would be the best time for Zhuowen to leave. Therefore, Zhuowen decided to stay in the giant spirit sect for half a year. After half a year, he would pass the position of sect master to Sun Ruoyu. And in this half a year, Zhuowen would increase the defensive measures and elixir reserves of the giant spirit sect, and try his best to improve the high-level cultivation of the giant spirit sect. This could be considered Zhuowen's repayment for helping the great spirit sect avoid being wanted by the Corp sect. Sun Ruoyu chatted with Zhuowen about the details of the sect leader's succession before leaving the sect leader's great hall. After Sun Ruoyu left, Zhuowen returned to the sect leader's great hall. After setting up layers of formations, he summoned 2 figures from the great world. One of them was an old man in a black robe. However, this old man was as thin as a match, and his aura was very weak. It was Wuxia, who was imprisoned by Ghost Plume. The other person was naturally Ghost Plume. Wuxia had been in this state ever since most of his essence qi was absorbed by the dead man's flower. Zhuowen had used most of his methods, but he still couldn't restore Wuxia. This time, Zhuowen summoned Ghost Plume because he wanted to ask Ghost Plume how to restore Wuxia. Ghost Plume, why can't Wuxia's essence qi be replenished? Why is he always in this state? Do you have any way to restore him? Zhuowen asked. Ghost Plume was somewhat dejected. Although Zhuowen promised not to kill him, he knew that Zhuowen wouldn't let him go so easily. At this moment, when Zhuowen asked, Ghost Plume's eyes flickered. He asked back, If I tell you how to restore Elder Yin's essence qi, will you let me go? Slap. Zhuowen's reply to Ghost Plume was a slap. Zhuowen coldly said, Ghost Plume, do you think you have the qualifications to bargain with me now? My promise not to kill you is already the greatest tolerance I can give you. Now you want a yard after taking an inch? Ghost Plume's face was ugly, and his eyes were filled with resentment. However, he didn't dare to refute. Right now, he was just a fish under Zhuowen's knife. He was at the mercy of Zhuowen. What? You don't want to talk? Zhuowen's voice was very cold. Ghost Plume trembled all over. In the end, he gave in and said, I said, whoever tied the bell should untie it. This Wuxia had most of his essence energy absorbed by the dead man's flower. If he wants to recover, he has to absorb the essence energy of the dead man's flower. Zhuowen was startled. He didn't expect it to be so simple. Although he had consumed a large portion of the dead man's flower to break the seal around the Yama demon diagram, he still had a few stalks of dead man's flower left. Zhuowen removed all the dead man's flowers from his body and let Wuxia absorb them. When the essence of the dead flower was completely absorbed by Yin Wu Xie's skin and flesh became smooth and round, and her aura also became much stronger. It seemed that Ghost Plume's method was correct. Originally, Yin Wu Xie was simply too weak, so she had always been in a muddle-headed state, her mind unclear. Now that he had completely recovered, his mind was naturally clear. "Thank you, Master, for saving me." Yin Wuxie was at a loss at first. Then, he quickly realized something and hurriedly knelt and bowed to Zhuowen. Not far away, Ghost Plume looked at the respectful Yin Wuxie with disdain. However, he didn't say anything. "Well, I'm wanted by the 10 Ultimate Yin Corps sect. Moreover, the 10 Ultimate Yin Corps sect's domain has been completely sealed. I can't leave for the time being, so you can stay in my great world for the time being. And Ghost Plume, this guy is very cunning. Help me keep an eye on him and don't let him do anything strange," Zhuowen instructed indifferently. Then, he put Yin Wuxie and Ghost Plume into his great world. Then, he took out the Yama Demon diagram from his great world. Ever since he had used the Panga Banner to destroy the Yama Demon Lord's spirit and obtained his memories, Zhuowen knew how to use the Yama Demon diagram. However, just knowing how to use the Yama Demon diagram was not enough. He had to make the Yama Demon diagram recognize him as its master. From the Yama Demon Lord's memories, Zhuowen learned that there were 2 ways to make the Yama Demon diagram recognize him as its master. One of them was to be strong enough to forcibly tame the Yama Demon diagram. Zhuowen thought that his strength was not bad, but the Yama Demon diagram was a divine artifact after all. It was the Yama Demon Lord's favorite divine artifact. With his current strength, it was obviously unrealistic to rely on his strength to tame the Yama Demon diagram. Therefore, Zhuowen directly ignored this method and planned to use the second method. The second method was the blood sacrifice method. It was to feed the Yama Demon diagram with one's blood essence. Through this feeding method, the Yama Demon diagram would become familiar with the smell and aura of the cultivator and eventually develop a sense of dependence on the cultivator. However, this method was very extreme because the Yama Demon diagram's requirement for blood essence was very high. Even the Yama Demon Lord did not dare to use this method. He was afraid that his blood essence would be sucked dry by the Yama Demon diagram. Zhuowen was very hesitant. In the end, he decided to use the second method. Chapter 29 10. Chen Yuanshui exited seclusion. Let's go all out. I cultivate the Pangu sacred body after all, and my self-healing ability is extremely strong. I don't believe that this Yama Demon portrait can really suck me dry. Zhuowen's eyes flashed with ruthlessness. He bit his thumb and covered it with the end of the Yama Demon portrait scroll. Zhuowen's body trembled as if he was struck by lightning. He felt his blood essence being sucked uncontrollably by the scroll, and the blood in his body was flowing in reverse at an extremely fast speed. The next day, when Sun Ruoyu knocked on the door of the sect leader's hall, she saw a greasy young man with shriveled cheeks and dull eyes. If it weren't for the young man's clothes, Sun Ruoyu almost couldn't recognize him as Zhuowen. "Brother Ma, what happened to you? What happened last night?" Sun Ruoyu asked curiously. Zhuowen, with panda eyes, said reluctantly, "It's nothing. I was too excited last night and couldn't sleep. The sect leader succession ceremony is about to begin. Let's go." With that, Zhuowen staggered the moment he stepped out of the door. If Sun Ruoyu hadn't caught Zhuowen in time, Zhuowen would have fallen flat on his face. "Brother Ma, are you sure you're okay?" Sun Ruoyu asked worriedly. "It's nothing. It's just a side effect of insomnia. Help me out." Zhuowen forced a smile, but he was cursing in his heart. Last night, his blood essence was almost sucked dry by the Yama Demon portrait several times. If it weren't for his freakish self-healing ability, Zhuowen would have died many times over. However, Zhuowen was quite satisfied with the final result. The Yama demon portrait had indeed developed a sense of dependence on him, and it had successfully recognized him as its master. The sect leader succession ceremony was held in the largest square in the sect. At this moment the square was empty. All the cultivators in the sect had come, and their faces were filled with excitement. At the front of the square there was a huge platform. At this moment there were 6 figures with powerful auras standing on the platform. These 6 people were the 6 elders that Zhuowen had bestowed with the Heaven's Mandate pill. The 6 elders' auras were far stronger than they had been 7 days ago. One of them had even become a half-step Heaven's Mandate Lord. Clearly, the 6 of them had used all 6 of their special-grade destiny pills, and the effects were quite good. The 6 were all grateful to Zhuowen. Destiny pills, Zhuowen, they hoped that he would give them more destiny pills. They knew that the destiny pills, with the destiny pill as the destiny pills, they would be able to become destiny masters in a short time and become master. The second step Dao proving realm Dao realm the realm stage realm. Everyone. Com, Sun Ruoyu translation Sun translation Sun translation 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 N translation 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 translation. It had only been a single night. How did this powerful new Grandmaster of the past turn into such a weak chicken? Translation, sect master. That is, master was no, and understood master, and know that, master, and son master, t.s. master, masters, master, translation Zhuowen translation black lines appeared on his forehead when he saw the elder's teasing expression. What was this old man thinking? Sun Ruoyu also heard the elder's implied meaning. She spat, her ears turning red. Okay. Let's begin the sect master succession ceremony. Sun Ruoyu changed the topic. The 6 elders naturally had no objections, and the succession ceremony that followed was very boring. It was nothing more than Zhuowen going up to say a few words and express his thoughts. Then, as the granddaughter of the old sect master, Sun Ruoyu would officially hand over the sect master's token to Zhuowen. Although Zhuowen had already obtained the sect master's token, it was still a ceremony. In order to win over the hearts of the people, Zhuowen promised to distribute more Dao gathering pills within half a year, which received warm applause from the crowd. Wait. Just as the ceremony was about to end, a loud roar came from the distance. Everyone looked over and saw 2 streaks of light fly over and land directly on the high platform above the square. The person in the lead was a middle-aged man with sharp eyes like a hawk, and beside him was a man with a charred face. Zhuowen was no stranger to the black-faced man behind the middle-aged man. Naturally, it was Chen Xiyong, who had been struck by the lightning array 7 days ago. The lightning generated by the lightning array set up by Zhuowen was no ordinary lightning. Although Chen Xiyong was a Dao-confirming powerhouse, it was impossible for him to recover in a short time after being severely injured by such powerful lightning. As soon as Chen Xiyong landed on the high platform, he stared at Zhuowen. His skin was originally very white, but now it was completely charred, and he was almost disfigured. His resentment towards Zhuowen was very deep. Zhuowen ignored Chen Xiyong and looked at the middle-aged man in front of Chen Xiyong, saying, "Qin Yuanshui? Good eyesight, you've guessed this old man's identity." Qin Yuanshui's eyes flashed with pride, and then a powerful aura suddenly emerged from his body, increasing the pressure on the entire square. The moment everyone in the square felt this pressure, their scalps tingled and they exclaimed, "Heaven's Mandate Master, Elder Chen has successfully advanced to Heaven's Mandate Master." Sun Ruoyu's eyes also changed slightly. She remembered that Chen Yuanshui hadn't been in seclusion for long, but he actually came out so quickly and smoothly broke through. This was really beyond her expectations. Hearing the exclamations of the crowd below, Chen Yuanshui looked at Zhuowen proudly and said, I heard that you're called Ma Yujie, right? And I also heard that you're a Heaven's Mandate Divine Array Master and a Heaven's Mandate Alchemist, but you're a little weak. Originally, the trouble you caused in the sect was enough for me to sentence you to death, but I'm magnanimous and can let you live on the premise that you hand over the sect master's token, kneel down, and swear loyalty to this old man. As long as you do these, this old man will let bygones be bygones and will use you again, making you the most important dog in this old man's life. Just as Chen Yuanxue finished speaking, he felt that the atmosphere around him was strange. This was because the crowd below the stage didn't raise any voices of support for him. Instead, they looked on coldly. And the young man supported by Sun Ruoyu was looking at Chen Yuanxue mockingly, as if he was looking at a clown. This kind of silent contempt made Chen Yuanshue's heart burn with anger. He coldly said, "What? Are you looking down on this old man?" As he spoke, Chen Yuanshue's aura grew stronger. He didn't hesitate to release the powerful energy that belonged to a Heaven's Mandate Master. "You're just a clown, I don't even want to look at you." Zhuowen shook his head speechlessly. This Chen Yuanxue was just a Heaven's Mandate Master. In his eyes, he was no different from a clown. "You're courting death." Chen Yuanxue was enraged by Zhuowen's disregard. He stomped his right foot and blasted a palm at Zhuowen. Powerful energy ripples formed a vast palm shadow in the air, and it fell on Zhuowen's head. He wanted to use his absolute advantage to destroy this arrogant brat. Unfortunately, a sword light flashed and the palm was destroyed. Chen Yuanxue didn't even have time to react. He felt pain in his limbs and fell to the ground. Chapter 29:11. Leaving without saying goodbye, Chen Yuanshue's face was filled with terror as he watched his limbs being chopped off. Blood splattered everywhere as he fell into a pool of blood, completely at a loss. He looked in horror at the young man who was being supported by Sun Ruoyu, as well as the blood-red divine sword floating beside the young man. He knew that it was the blood-red divine sword floating beside Zhuowen that had chopped off his limbs in an instant. This blood-colored divine sword was too terrifying. He couldn't even see the trajectory of the divine sword clearly, and his limbs were inexplicably chopped off. What kind of speed and strength did one need to have to do this? Sun Ruoyu was also stunned. She didn't even know how Zhuowen did it. All she saw was Chen Yuanxue lying in a pool of blood. On the other hand, everyone in the square was dumbstruck. They were completely dumbfounded. What was going on? After all, Chen Yuanxue was the strongest person in the giant spirit sect. He was just about to clamor about to teach Zhuowen a lesson when his limbs were chopped off. It was too strange. Of course, when many people came back to their senses, they noticed the blood-red divine sword beside Zhuowen and revealed expressions of relief and awe. They knew that Chen Yuanshue's current state was definitely caused by the blood-red divine sword. To be able to instantly chop off the limbs of a Heaven's Mandate Master, this blood-red divine sword must be a divine artifact that surpassed the Heaven's Mandate level. Everyone finally knew why the young man in front of them was so fearless from the beginning. It turned out that he had such a powerful divine artifact on him. The 6 elders on the high platform rejoiced in their hearts. They secretly exclaimed that they had sought refuge with this young man early. Otherwise, the consequences would have been unimaginable. Chen Yuanxue, who was lying on the ground, was a living example. "Miss Ruoyu, I'll leave this clown to you to deal with," Zhuowen said to Sun Ruoyu beside him and left the square. There were too many things he needed to do. He needed to return Sun Ruoyu's favor, familiarize himself with the Yama ghost portrait, and prepare for the star battlefield. Therefore, Zhuowen didn't want to waste extra time on a clown like Chen Yuanxue. In the blink of an eye, 3 months had passed. The news of Zhuowen's arrest within the Yin Corps sect was much more relaxed than before. Moreover, as the news of ancestor Magus Gong Gong's death spread out, Most of the cultivators were now discussing how to get a share of the loot. For the past 3 months, Zhuowen had spent most of his time in the sect master's great hall. During this time, other than studying the god's divination secret and familiarizing himself with the Yama ghost portrait, he had been refining divine pills in large quantities. He mainly refined Heaven's Mandate pills, Profound Element pills, and Eternal pills. Of course, he refined the most Heaven's Mandate pills. As for the Profound Element pills and Eternal pills, he only refined a single bottle. Profound Secrets pills and Eternal pills were almost non-existent in the Great Spirit sect. After all, the Great Spirit sect didn't even have experts like the Profound Secrets Lord and Eternal Lord. As such, these 2 spirit pills weren't of much use to the Great Spirit sect. He'd refined 1 bottle each, and it was mainly for Sun Ruyu. He'd seen Sun Ruyu and knew that she possessed an earth-rank ancestral Tao root. Moreover, her natural talent was extremely good, and it was very likely for her to attain the Eternal Lord realm in the future. He refined these 3 divine pills mainly to pave the way for Sun Ruayu's future cultivation. Of course, Zhuowen refined the most Tao-gathering pill. This kind of divine pill was useful to all the disciples in the sect, so its consumption was huge. Moreover, the medicinal ingredients for the Tao-gathering pill were very simple, but it was very particular about the refining technique. Zhuowen was a peak eternal level alchemist, so his refining technique was definitely the most advanced. Refining the Tao-gathering pill was really easy for him, and it wasn't a problem at all. Another 2 months passed, and Zhuowen had a deeper understanding of the god's divination secret. He had also completely perfected the flaws of his self-created ability, Destiny Spacetime Slaughter. The current Destiny Spacetime Slaughter was more than several times stronger than when Zhuowen had first created it. In the last month, Zhuowen let Sun Ruyu live in the sect master's great hall. At that time, everyone in the sect was moved, and rumors of the new sect master and Sun Ruyu began to spread. It caused many people in the sect to gossip, and various versions were spread. However, a month later, Sun Ruyu walked out of the sect master's great hall, and everyone in the sect was moved. Because Sun Ruayu's cultivation had broken through to the Heaven's Mandate master in one fell swoop, shocking the entire sect. Everyone knew that before Sun Ruyu entered the sect master's great hall, she was only a peak heavenly Tao master. But in just a month, she actually became a Heaven's Mandate master powerhouse, and her realm suddenly increased by 2 small realms and 1 big realm. This was really incredible. Even Sun Ruyu felt incredulous, but she had to believe it because it really happened to her. However, Sun Ruyu didn't have any happy expression. She silently looked at the spirit ring in her hand, and her eyes showed a dim look. In the month when Zhuowen helped her break through, she already had a bad premonition. After she had successfully broken through to the Heaven's Mandate Master, Zhuowen gave her the spirit ring, the sect master's token, and the god's divination secret. Zhuowen left, leaving only a divine thought sound transmission before leaving the giant spirit sect. And this divine thought sound transmission was to step down from the position of sect master and give it to Sun Ruyu. He probably already planned to do this when he succeeded as sect master. Sun Ruyu sighed softly and muttered to herself. On a mountain peak thousands of miles away from the giant spirit sect, a figure silently looked in the direction of the giant spirit sect. This was a young man dressed in black. The young man had 2 scars on his face, and his eyes were as bright as the moon. This young man was naturally Zhuowen. After the half-year deadline was up, he had already used the god's divination technique to find a way out of the 10 ultimate Corpse sect's domain for him. Therefore, after he secretly handed the sect master's token and the god's divination secret to Sun Ruyu, he chose to leave without saying goodbye. However, Zhuowen didn't feel guilty. In the past 6 months, he had done enough for the giant spirit sect, so he had a clear conscience. Maybe I won't have the chance to come here again in the future. Zhuowen muttered to himself. Then, his figure flashed and disappeared from the mountain peak. The favor he asked Sun Ruoyu had been completely repaid. In the past 6 months, he had indeed done what the sect master should have done. Moreover, he had refined a large number of divine pills and set up powerful array restrictions in most areas of the Giant Spirit sect. In particular, the Giant Spirit sect's Great Sect Protection Array. On the surface, it looked like an ordinary Heaven's Mandate Great Array, but in fact there was another world inside. Once the ordinary Heaven's Mandate Great Array was broken, it would activate the Eternal Level Great Sect Protection Array hidden inside this ordinary Great Array. It should be known that those who could have an Eternal Level Great Sect Protection Array were basically the treatment of the more powerful forces at the Dao Mansion level. It could be said that with the layers of array restrictions that the Giant Spirit sect now had, ordinary forces at the Dao Mansion level would inevitably suffer a great loss if they wanted to attack the Giant Spirit sect. Even if a powerful Dao Mansion level force attacked the Giant Spirit sect, they might be able to destroy the current Giant Spirit sect, but they would definitely have to pay a great price. Chapter 29:12. Returning to the Pill Array Immortal Alliance after Zhuowen left the Giant Spirit sect, he did not immediately leave the Ten Extremities Een Corp sect. Instead, he headed towards the core sect of the Ten Extremities Een Corp sect. He had already calculated that a month ago, most of the upper echelons of the sect, including sect leader Senki Een and Great Elder Gao Yanghong, had already left the sect and headed towards the Star Wars battlefield. It could be said that the current Ten Extremities Een Corp sect was at its weakest. Of course, Zhuowen did not return to the Ten Extremities Een Corp sect for the sake of the Een Corp sect. Although most of the upper echelons of the Ten Extremities Een Corp sect had left, the sect protecting formation in the Ten Extremities Een Corp sect was not to be trifled with. He felt that the Great Sect Protecting Array was at least at the creation realm. The power of such a huge Great Sect Protecting Array was very terrifying, especially with so many cultivators in the sect working together. No matter how big Zhuowen's courage was, he would not dare to challenge such a colossal sect alone. The reason he returned to the Ten Extremities Een Corp sect was naturally because the ancient transportation formation of the Ten Extremities Een Corp sect had been unsealed. He wanted to use the ancient transportation formation of the Ten Extremities Een Corp sect to return to the Pill Array Immortal Alliance first. However, as Zhuowen got closer and closer to the Ten Extremities Een Corp sect, he realized that there were still wanted posters for him everywhere. It was just that the security was not as tight as before. When Zhuowen arrived at the entrance of the Ten Extremities Een Corp sect, he was stopped by the gatekeeper as expected. Zhuowen did not panic. Instead, he used the heavenly divination technique to temporarily change the trajectory of his fate, causing the gatekeeper to mistakenly think that Zhuowen was a disciple of the sect. After bluffing his way through, Zhuowen smoothly entered the Ten Extremities Een Corp sect. After entering the sect, Zhuowen realized that the Ten Extremities Een Corp sect was much more deserted than the first time he had come. "I'm so envious of the seniors and juniors who have obtained the right to go to the Star Wars battlefield. Once Gonggong's grave appears, they will have a chance to enter and obtain great opportunities. It can't be helped. There are so many people in the Ten Extremities Een Corp sect. Do we have to leave the entire sect? That's obviously not realistic. Moreover, you and I are merely heavenly Dao masters, so we naturally don't have the qualifications to go with them." Along the way, Zhuowen heard a lot about the place where Gonggong had fallen in the Starry Sky battlefield. Soon, Zhuowen arrived at the sect's ancient transportation formation. Paying a fee, Zhuowen left the sect's Een Corp's Ten Extremities Een Corp sect. The outcome was unexpectedly smooth, causing Zhuowen to be in disbelief. The art of heavenly divination is truly miraculous. It really did help me escape from danger. However, every time I use the art of heavenly divination, it will consume my lifespan. As Zhuowen muttered to himself, he appeared in the transfer array of the Pill Array Immortal Alliance. Zhuowen walked out of the teleportation array and immediately heard a familiar voice. Immortal Master Zhuo, you're finally back. I sent you many messages, but you didn't reply. Where have you been all this time? Zhuowen turned around and saw an old man with a solemn expression. He was looking at Zhuowen in surprise. Zhuowen smiled when he saw the old man. This old man was no stranger to Zhuowen. He was one of the 5 great immortal masters of the Pill Array Immortal Alliance, Huan Taiping. He was also the immortal master who had the best relationship with Zhuowen. I was in a hurry recently, so I didn't pay attention to the communication jade talisman. That's why I didn't know that Immortal Master Huan sent me a message. Zhuowen replied politely. Of course, Zhuowen knew that Huan Taiping had sent him a message. However, he had been on the run at that time, so he didn't have the time to reply to Huan Taiping. Later on, he had forgotten about this matter. So that's how it is. I heard that the 10 Extremes Een Corps sect had issued a warrant for a cultivator named Zhuowen. I thought it was you. I was just about to head to the 10 Extremes Een Corps sect to confirm it when you came back. It seems like the Zhuowen wanted by the 10 Extremes Een Corps sect is just someone with the same name as you, Huan Taiping said with a smile. Zhuowen said awkwardly, Immortal Master Huan, actually, the Zhuowen wanted by the 10 Extremes Een Corps sect is me. Huan Taiping's expression froze. His eyes widened as he stared at Zhuowen. No way, the 10 Extremes Een Corps sect really is you. Zhuowen forced a smile and nodded. The 10 Extremes Een Corps sect has gut. You're an immortal master of our Pill Array Immortal Alliance. You have a high status, yet they dare to issue a warrant for you. Immortal Master Zhuo, why would the 10 Extremes Een Corps sect issue a warrant for you? Huan Taiping's expression became serious. Zhuowen shook his head and said, It's a long story. It's not convenient to talk about it here. Take me to see the Alliance leader first. The matter of the 10 Extremes Een Corps sect was related to the secret of the dead flower. Zhuowen naturally would not speak of it casually. It was not that he did not trust Huan Taiping, but this matter was too important. He planned to talk about it after seeing Ji Wuming. Okay, the Alliance leader is in the Immortal Alliance. I'll take you there. Huan Taiping saw that Zhuowen found it difficult to talk about it, so he did not ask further. He quickly took Zhuowen to the cave residence where Ji Wuming was at. On the way, Zhuowen asked Huan Taiping about the place where Gong Gong had fallen, and learned that this news was known to almost every household in the host region, causing a great commotion. It was said that this news was deliberately released by the 10 Extremes Een Corps sect leader, Senki Een. What surprised Zhuowen even more was that this news was not only widely spread in the host region, but also in the other 3 precept regions of the Xianmi heavenly domain. Even the foreign tribes on the other side of the Starry Sky battlefield were extremely enthusiastic about it. It was because of this news that countless experts of the 4 precept regions of the Xianmi heavenly domain, as well as the experts of the foreign tribes on the other side of the Starry Sky battlefield, gathered in the Starry Sky battlefield. Immortal Master Huan, our Pill Array Immortal Alliance does not plan to send people to the Starry Sky battlefield? Zhuowen asked in surprise. Huan Taiping shook his head and said, Our Pill Array Immortal Alliance is just a bunch of guys who refine pills and set up arrays. Our battle strength is generally very low. We will only be cannon fodder if we go there. However, the Alliance leader has many cultivator friends. He told his friends that if they can find precious divine medicines and materials in the place where Gong Gong died, they should bring some back. Zhuowen nodded, but he was deep in thought. He felt that Senki Een should have deliberately leaked this news. As for why he did so, Zhuowen also learned from Ghost Plume that it was to let the other cultivators share the risk. It was said that when Senki Yin found out about the place where Gong Gong died, he did not dare to take the risk of going in alone. If even an early-stage master heavenly domain expert like Senki Yin was afraid of this place, it was definitely not a good place. Thinking of this, Zhuowen was not in a hurry to go to the starry sky battlefield. He was sure that the first batch of cultivators to enter would not be Senki Yin or the other major powers who knew about the inside story. They were usually rogue cultivators who did not belong to any sections. They were definitely cannon fodder for those major powers to explore. After all, Ghost Plume was Senki Yin's illegitimate son. He knew a lot about Senki Yin's plans, especially about the place where Gong Gong died. Chapter 29:13. Informing the dead man Flower. The dark ancient city was the most mysterious and terrifying place in the Star Wars battlefield. Back then, in the dark city, Sin Qin saw Gong Gong's finger sweep across his eyes from a long distance away. Moreover, wherever that finger passed, the water roared and turned into a boundless ocean. Although Senki Yin had only seen the finger, he could guess that it was Gong Gong's finger. Gong Gong was the master of water power among the 12 ancestral shamans. He was the source of all water power. With just a flick of his finger, he was able to turn the place into a vast ocean. Apart from ancestor Magus Gong Gong, no one else could do that. After Senki Yin guessed that it was ancestral shaman Gong Gong's finger, he realized that there was probably Gong Gong's complete corpse in the dark ancient city. This must be the place where Gong Gong had fallen. Back then, Senki Yin had chased the finger all the way into the dark ancient city. However, because he had gone too deep and the depths of the dark ancient city were too terrifying, Senki Yin had finally given up after weighing the pros and cons. This was because he could feel that there was a power in the depths of the dark ancient city that made him very wary. Although he could go in and explore if he wanted to, he would have to pay a very painful price. Senki Yin was not someone who would do things that he was not confident in, so he did not go too deep into the dark ancient city in the end. Instead, he took the initiative to retreat. Back then, Zhuowen had learned from Ghost Plume that the dark ancient city was the place where Gong Gong had fallen. After learning that it was just Senki Yin's guess, he could not help but curse. Senki Yin was really sinister. This guy had clearly said that the location he knew was the place where Gong Gong had fallen. Even he had almost believed it. Now that he learned that it was just Senki Yin's guess, it was really too much of a scam. This was why Zhuowen did not immediately rush to the Star Wars battlefield half a year later. Instead, he came to the Pil Array Immortal Alliance first. After all, Zhuowen already knew that the location was the dark ancient city, and it might not be the place where ancestral wizard Gong Gong had fallen. Therefore, Zhuowen was not very anxious. In his opinion, everyone who entered the dark ancient city did not have a clear direction, and it was still unknown whether they could find the corpse of ancestral shaman Gong Gong. The cultivators who entered early were nothing more than cannon fodder. Zhuowen and Huan Taiping chatted as they walked. From Huan Taiping, Zhuowen learned a lot about the recent happenings and developments. "We're here." Huan Taiping brought Zhuowen into Ji Wuming's cave. In the living room, Ji Wuming stood there with his hands clasped behind his back, as if he knew someone was coming for him. "Alliance Master." Zhuowen and Huan Taiping cupped their hands and saluted Ji Wuming. Ji Wuming turned around and looked at Zhuowen and Huan Taiping with a smile. "What can I do for the two of you?" "Actually, it's like this." Huan Taiping stepped forward and narrated all of Zhuowen's matters in full detail. Ji Wuming raised his eyebrows, squinted his eyes and said coldly, "The 10 Extremes Yin Corpse sect is really bold. How dare they arrest an immortal master of our Pil Array Immortal Alliance?" Then, Ji Wuming's eyes fell on Zhuowen. "Immortal Master Zhuo, tell me, why do the 10 Extremes Yin Corpse sect want to arrest you?" "It's because of this thing." Zhuowen took out a dead flower from the macro world. This was the dead flower he had left behind for Ji Wuming to appraise. This is, Ji Wuming looked at the dead flower in front of him with curiosity, but soon his eyes became gloomy. This is the dead flower, the product of the 10 extremes in corpse sex inhumane experiments over the years. I have the information of the dead flower research of the 10 extremes in corpse sect. Then, Zhuowen took out all the jade slips he had obtained from the secret underground chamber of the 10 extremes in corpse sect and handed them to Ji Wuming. Ji Wuming took the jade slips and glanced at them casually. His face suddenly became solemn, and he did not look very good. Senki-yin is really too much. All these years, he has been studying these unorthodox method. Ji Wuming snorted coldly. Alliance Master, the Dark Nether Hell is controlled by the 10 extremities in corpse sect. Most of the cultivators who enter there die a violent death. Then, the corpses of the dead cultivators are taken away by the 10 extremities in corpse sect to study the dead man flower. Zhuowen cupped his hands and continued, I think the Alliance Master should announce this matter to the world and expose the actions of the 10 extremes in corpse sect Master, Senki-yin. Ji Wuming nodded. Don't worry, Immortal Master Zhua. I will deal with this matter. By the way, have you found the Underworld Soul Flower? Zhuowen did not think much about it. He nodded slightly, took out the Underworld Soul Flower, and handed it to Ji Wuming. Ji Wuming was very satisfied with the Underworld Soul Flower and said, Now, I will refine the 8 sceneries soul-condensing divine pill for your confidant. By the way, Alliance Master, where is Wushang now? Zhuowen asked. Oh, I have placed her in the pavilion in the northwest corner of the Immortal Allies. There are people there to take care of her. Don't worry, Ji Wuming said. I hope the Alliance Master can take me to see her. Zhuowen said in a deep voice. I still need to refine the 8 sceneries soul-condensing divine pill. I will take you there when I am done, Ji Wuming said lightly. Zhuowen frowned slightly and cupped his hands. Then I will wait here for the Alliance Master to refine the 8 sceneries soul-condensing divine pill. Ji Wuming took a deep look at Zhuowen and nodded. All right, I only need half a day to refine the 8 sceneries soul-condensing divine pills. You can wait here for half a day. Taiping, you can go back first. Huan Taiping cupped his hands and said a few words to Zhuowen. Then he left. Ji Wuming told Zhuowen not to disturb him and went straight to the inner room to refine the pill. Zhuowen silently sat cross-legged on the side, waiting for Ji Wuming. Zhuowen did not tell Ji Wuming about the Yama ghost diagram. After all, it was a heaven-level divine artifact. He would not casually tell Ji Wuming about it to avoid unnecessary trouble. Half a day later, Ji Wuming came out from the inner room and said, Master Zhua, now I will take you to see Moyan Wushang. Here is the 8 sceneries soul-condensing divine pill. Take it and give it to Moyan Wushang. Zhuowen took the 8 scenery soul-condensing divine pill from Ji Wuming and felt a surge of medicinal power. On the surface of the 8 scenery soul-condensing divine pill, there were 8 different colored patterns. Chapter 29:14. Dark Ancient City. The northwest corner of the Pill Array Immortal Alliance was a relatively remote place in the Alliance. However, in this remote northwest corner there was a very luxurious pavilion. However, due to the fact that the northwestern corner was too remote, it was hard to see anyone there. Although this place was remote, the environment was good. There were pavilions, terraces, waterfalls, and towering trees. The moment Zhuowen entered this place, he couldn't help but nod in his heart. Although this place was a little remote, the environment was to his liking. It was like a paradise. This place was chosen by Taiping. Is Master Zhua satisfied? Ji Wuming, who was standing at the head of the flying divine tool, asked when he saw the surprised look on Zhuowen's face. Although this place is a little remote, the environment is good. I'm very satisfied. Master Huan is very considerate. Zhuowen nodded. Ji Wuming nodded and pointed to the pavilion in the distance. I've placed Moyan Wushang in that pavilion. You go and feed her the 8 scenery soul-condensing divine pill. And Zhuowen was surprised when he saw that Ji Wuming wanted to say something. Ji Wuming had always given him the impression that he was calm and unhurried, as if nothing could make him worry. Now Ji Wuming's hesitation really surprised Zhuowen. Alliance Master, if you have something to say, you can tell me directly, Zhuowen said in a deep voice. Ji Wuming nodded and said calmly, Have you told anyone about the dead flower? Zhuowen was startled, but he didn't think much about it. He shook his head and said, After I escaped from the 10 Extremes Een Corpse sect, I've been on the run. I returned to the Pill Array Immortal Alliance directly. This matter is very important, so I naturally can't speak of it casually. Master Zhua, you've done well. This matter is very important, so you can't speak of it casually. Otherwise, you'll be targeted by people with ulterior motive. Ji Wuming said seriously. Don't worry, Alliance Master. I know this. I don't know when you plan to publicize the matter of the dead flower. With your reputation, I think most of the forces in the Eastern Dao domain will believe you. Zhuowen looked at Ji Wuming. The latter smiled and said, I'll publicize this matter tomorrow. The dead flower is harmful to others. It can't be delayed for too long, and it will harm other cultivators. Thank you, Alliance Master. I'll go in and check on Wushang first. At this moment, Zhuowen and Ji Wuming had arrived at the door of the pavilion. Zhuowen cupped his hands and opened the door to enter. Ji Wuming stood silently at the door. Looking at Zhuowen's back, his eyes slowly narrowed, and his expression flickered. Pavilion was pavilion. Was pavilion. Was pavilions pavilion. Was pavilion was. At a glance, Zhuowen saw the crystal coffin placed in the center of the pavilion. Inside the coffin lay a beautiful woman who looked like a sleeping beauty. Zhuowen stepped in front of the coffin and opened the lid. He said softly, Wushang, although I can't save you immediately, I'm thinking of a way. I'll definitely wake you up. After that, Zhuowen took out the 8 scenery soul concentrating God pill and fed it to Moyan of Wushang. After swallowing the 8 scenery soul consolidating divine pill, Moyan Wushang's pale face suddenly became rosy. Zhuowen could clearly feel that Moyan Wushang's aura was getting stronger. He was no longer as weak as before. As Zhuowen's consciousness scanned Moyan Wushang's soul, the loose soul in his body had become a lot more solid. This was just the 8 scenery soul condensing divine pill, and there was already such a significant effect. If Moyan of Wushang completely absorbed the effects of the pill, the effect would be even better. Seeing that Moyan of Wushang's complexion was getting better and better, Zhuowen's heart was completely relieved. He knew that after Moyan of Wushang absorbed the 8 scenery soul condensing divine pill, his soul would become extremely solid. Even if he slept for 1,000 years, 10,000 years, or even longer, his soul would not naturally collapse. Because the only thing Zhuowen had to do was to help Moyan of Wushang recover the missing 6 desires on the soul level. And to do this, he had to refine the 6 desires soul-condensing divine pill. After thinking that the 6 desires soul-condensing divine pill was a heaven-level divine pill, Zhuowen felt a little bitter, but he was not discouraged. He knew that it was basically impossible for him to refine the 6 desires soul-condensing divine pill now, but he believed that it was not impossible for him to refine it in the future. Of course, his primary goal now was to find the 6 heaven-level main ingredients for the 6 desires soul-condensing divine pill. After Moyan of Wushang's soul had completely stabilized, Zhuowen felt relieved and put Moyan of Wushang back into the great world. Walking out of the pavilion, Zhuowen looked at Ji Wuming and asked, Alliance Master, I want to ask if you have heard of the 1,000-year flowerless eyes, red cloud green sun red, blazing phoenix exquisite leaf, Buddha yellow water bamboo, Three Realms Flower Chinyu, and Red Moon Star Wave Milk. Ji Wuming looked at Zhuowen as if he had seen a ghost and said, "These 6 heaven-level divine pills are rare in the world. Immortal Master Zhuo, why are you asking about these 6 heaven-level divine pills?" "I want to find these 6 heaven-level divine pills. This is the key to whether or not Wushang can recover his 6 desires," Zhuowen said firmly. Ji Wuming's expression was complicated. He pondered for a moment and said, "We don't have any heaven-grade elixirs in the Pill Array Immortal Alliance, but we definitely have some in the Pill Array Dao domain. However, there won't be many of them. Even a true heaven-grade alchemist rarely uses heaven-grade elixirs because there are too few of them. Only in the Pill Array Dao domain," Zhuowen asked with a frown. "Heavenly divine medicines have appeared in the Starry Sky battlefield before. However, each time they appear, it will cause a bloodbath. There will be a great war and many experts will try to snatch them. With your current strength, even if such a heaven-level divine pill appears in the star battlefield, it will be difficult for you to snatch it." Ji Wuming shook his head. Zhuowen didn't answer Ji Wuming's question. Instead, he asked, "Does the Dark Ancient City also have heaven-level divine pills?" Ji Wuming was startled and immediately nodded. The Dark Ancient City is one of the most dangerous places in the star battlefield. The chances of heaven-level divine pills appearing here are even higher. Maybe one or more of the 6 heaven-level divine pills you want can be found there. Thank you for your advice. I'm going to the Dark Ancient City in the star battlefield. Can you give me a star map of the star battlefield?" Zhuowen cupped his fists. Chapter 29:15. Calculated Killing Intent. The reason why the astral battlefield was such a crucial place was because of its special geographical location. It was located at the border between the Xianmi heavenly domain and the primitive heavenly domain. In other words, if a Dao-confirming cultivator flew from the astral battlefield, it would only take a few months to reach the primitive heavenly domain from the Xianmi heavenly domain, or from the primitive heavenly domain to the Xianmi heavenly domain. Because of this special geographical location, the astral battlefield had always been in a terrible state of war since its formation. Both the alien races of the primitive heavenly domain and the cultivators of the Xianmi heavenly domain wanted to invade each other's territory, so the two heavenly domains fought each other all year round, resulting in countless casualties. Moreover, the astral battlefield was an unprecedented treasure land. Countless heavenly materials and earthly treasures had appeared in it. Many cultivators and alien races had obtained the treasures by luck and become experts, becoming legends for a time. As such rumors spread, more and more people became jealous and went to the astral battlefield to take risks, hoping to obtain great benefits there. The chances of a heaven-reaching divine herb appearing in such a treasure land were much higher than in other places. Ji Wuming looked deeply at Zhuowen and said, "I think you already know that ancestor sorcerer Gonggong died in the Dark Ancient City, so you want to enter the Dark Ancient City to try your luck? You have to think carefully. The Dark Ancient City is much more dangerous than the ordinary areas of the astral battlefield. Even an expert like Senki Yin wouldn't dare to enter the depths of the Dark Ancient City alone." Zhuowen cupped his fists and said, "I know what I'm doing. I hope Alliance Master can give me a map of the astral battlefield." Ji Wuming saw that Zhuowen had made up his mind, so he didn't say anything more. He simply handed a jade slip to Zhuowen and said, "This is the map of the astral battlefield. Because of the special nature of the astral battlefield, it is impossible to build a transmission array in that area. If you want to enter the astral battlefield, you must use a flying divine tool." Zhuowen took the jade slip, browsed it, and thanked Ji Wuming with cupped fist. Zhuowen and Ji Wuming chatted for a while before leaving the Pill Array Immortal Alliance. Ji Wuming silently looked at Zhuowen's back as he left. Behind him, Huan Taiping slowly walked out and said with a complicated look in his eyes, Alliance Master, I really didn't expect Immortal Master Zhua to be able to find the Dead Flower's secret laboratory in the Ten Extremes Een Corp sect. This matter is of great importance. If Immortal Master Zhua finds out about this, I'm afraid it will be troublesome. Ji Wuming sighed. I can only say that Master Zhua is too lucky to have run into the Dead Flower. However, the Dead Flower is the result of many years of joint research between me and Senki Een. We can't let it go to waste because of him. Huan Taiping's gaze flickered, and he said, Alliance Head, are you really going to make a move against Immortal Master Zhua? After all, he's already an Immortal Master of our Immortal Alliance, and he's also the best candidate for the qualifier 200 years later. Ji Wuming interrupted Huan Taiping and said, There are still 200 years before the qualifier. During this time, we can find a more talented young alchemist than Zhuowen. However, the Dead Flower can only be used once. If it fails, my efforts will be ruined, and I'll be cursed by countless people. What do you think I should do? Ji Wuming's eyes were sharp as he coldly looked at Huan Taiping beside him. The latter lowered his head, not daring to refute Ji Wuming. It was indeed as Ji Wuming had said. If he had to choose between the research of the Dead Flower and a talented junior, he would naturally choose the former. Alliance Master, how do you plan to deal with Zhuowen? Huan Taiping whispered. I've already contacted the Blood Prison 7 killers. 3 of them are willing to help. Ji Wuming said indifferently. Huan Taiping's pupils shrank. The Blood Prison 7 killers were the titles of the 7 high-ranking members of the Blood Prison organization. The Blood Prison 7 killers had assassinated countless experts over the years and created a great reputation for themselves. The weakest of the Blood Prison 7 killers was an early-stage Lord of Creation, while the strongest was a mid-stage Lord of Creation. Moreover, the Blood Prison 7 killers' battle prowess basically surpassed experts of the same level. Moreover, because they specialized in assassination and concealment techniques, each of them had killed experts of the same level or even a high-grade expert. This was also why the Blood Prison was so famous even among Dao Palace level factions, even though it was only a Dao Palace level faction. Whenever the Blood Prison was mentioned, it gave people the impression of being mysterious and powerful. 3 of them are willing to help? Huan Taiping shook his head inwardly. He knew that if the Blood Prison 7 killers took action, Zhuowen would undoubtedly die. Huan Taiping had indeed seen Zhuowen's strength before. It was indeed not bad, but it was still a little far from the Blood Prison 7 killers. Moreover, the Blood Prison 7 killers were best at sneak attacks and assassinations. Moreover, 3 of them had attacked together. He really couldn't think of a reason why Zhuowen could escape their pursuit. I originally thought that Immortal Master Zhua and I would always be good partners. Now, it seems like it was just wishful thinking. Immortal Master Zhua took a wrong step, so every step was wrong. Huan Taiping shook his head and thought to himself. Zhuowen sat cross-legged on the space-time roulette and rapidly streaked across the starry sky. He had already left the Pill Array Immortal Alliance for more than half a month. When he opened the map that Ji Wuming had given him again, he discovered that he would soon arrive at the Star Wars battlefield. With his current speed, he would be able to enter the Star Wars battlefield in 4 or 5 days. However, the closer he got to the Star Wars battlefield, the more uneasy Zhuowen felt. Zhuowen felt that something was wrong. He had cultivated to the point where he knew his destiny. Thus, he felt an inexplicable sense of unease in his heart. Something was definitely about to happen. Zhuowen pointed his right hand's 5 fingers and started to use the heavenly divination art. A mysterious energy spread out from his right hand's 5 fingers. This mysterious energy formed a pair of transparent void eyes above his head. Zhuowen knew that this was the manifestation of the heavenly divination art. It could see through falsehood and predict good and bad luck. Zhuowen saw a bloody light through the heavenly divination eye. His expression turned ugly. He knew that something ominous was waiting for him on the road ahead. Putting away the void eyes, Zhuowen's face turned slightly pale. However, his eyes were filled with indifference. He muttered in a low voice, 3 days later, a great killing intent will descend. It seems like I have to be prepared. Zhuowen didn't continue using the heavenly divination art. After all, the heavenly divination art wasn't without a price. The more he divined, the more his lifespan would be consumed. Chapter 29:16 Blood Prison 7 Killers 3 days later, the boundary of the astral battlefield appeared in the distance. The boundary of the astral battlefield was very different from the boundary of the other forces in the Xianmi heavenly domain. The other boundary emitted gentle starlight. However, the boundary of the astral battlefield was filled with blood-red light and a murderous aura. It was accompanied by foul resentment. From afar, the boundary of the astral battlefield looked like a vicious hell. A streak of light rapidly flew toward the boundary of the astral battlefield. However, tens of thousands of kilometers away from the boundary of the astral battlefield, 3 murderous auras instantly locked onto the streak of light. Immediately after, 3 terrifying attacks erupted and blasted into the streak of light. Rumble! There was a thunderous explosion. The streak of light didn't even have time to react before it was blasted into dust by the 3 terrifying attacks. He can't even withstand a single blow. I thought he would be some powerful expert. He was actually annihilated just like that. He's a little too weak. Big Brother is making a mountain out of a molehill by sending the 3 of us. From the information, this kid has a deep grudge with our blood prison. Back then, he killed many of our blood prison assassins. Although they were only low-level assassins, he still killed our people. 3 voices, neither yin nor yang, came from not far away from the sound of self-detonation. These were 3 men completely covered in blood-red robes. The 3 of them were wearing the same clothes. The only difference was the weapons in their hands and the insignia on the sleeves of their robes. The man in blood-red robes holding a blood-red sword had the ancient number 7 written on his sleeve. The man with the blood-red halberd had the ancient number 6 written on his sleeve. The man in blood-red robes with the strongest aura among the 3 wore blood-red gloves. The ancient number 5 was written on his sleeve. These 3 were none other than 5th killer, 6th killer, and 7th killer of the blood prison's 7 killers. 6th killer and 7th killer were both at the early stage of the God of Creation stage, while 5th killer was at the mid-stage of the God of Creation stage. Generally speaking, anyone who could make the 3 of them work together was usually someone important or a high-level expert of a Dao Palace faction. Now, the 3 killers had completely annihilated their target. The process was so simple that there was no process at all. The 3 killers couldn't help but grumble. They felt that they had used a sledgehammer to kill a chicken. Are you blood prison assassins? Suddenly, just as the 3 assassins were complaining, an unfriendly voice came from nearby. The 3 killers who were originally complaining all turned their heads and looked at the young man who was slowly walking over from behind. Their eyes narrowed. It's the target. He's not dead? 7 kills said in surprise. 5 kills and 6 kills were also shocked. Since their target was still alive, who was the one who had attacked them? There's no need to be surprised. What you killed just now was merely a puppet that I created in advance. However, the appearance and aura of that puppet were very similar to mine. If you didn't look carefully, it would be very difficult to distinguish the real from the fake. Zhuowen's voice was calm, but his eyes were filled with killing intent. It was not the first time that the blood prison assassins had provoked him. They had done it several times, and the assassins they sent were stronger each time. They really wanted to kill him. Furthermore, they had sent 3 God of Creation assassins. If Zhuowen had not known beforehand and had been ambushed by the 3 God of Creation assassins who had been lying in ambush in advance, Zhuowen knew that he would definitely have been injured, and the injuries would not be light. However, what Zhuowen did not understand was that from the way the three assassins attacked, it seemed that they had known that their target would pass through this path. Could it be that the Blood Prison had foreseen that Zhuowen would definitely come to the astral battlefield during this period of time and would definitely pass through this path? Oh? It seems that we've been tricked. You're really not ordinary. 5 Kills looked at Zhuowen with interest. He was not in a hurry to make a move. Although their assassination plan had failed, it did not matter because the aura of the young man in front of them was very weak. He was only the Lord of Mystery. His cultivation was too low. Even 7 Kills, who was the weakest among them, could easily kill him, let alone escape from their hands. It was precisely because the opponent was too weak that 5 Kills did not take him seriously. However, what I admire more is your courage. Since you knew that we were ambushing you, shouldn't you have fled in panic? You actually dared to appear in front of us? 5 Kills cocked his head to the side and said mockingly. Zhuowen's gaze was calm, and he said indifferently, "The reason I appeared in front of you is because you've angered me. The consequences are very severe." Haha, how laughable. Even a piece of trash like the Lord of Mystery has a temper? Don't say that I angered you. You should be honored that I killed you. 7 Kills' eyes flashed coldly, and his words were very presumptuous. Who hired you to kill me? Zhuowen did not pay attention to 7 Kills' words. Instead, he continued to ask questions. Looks like there's something wrong with your brain. You actually want to ask about your employer's information. Although you're about to die under my sword, I don't plan on letting you die as a ghost. It's better for you to die like this and slowly ask the King of Hell about it. 7 Kills licked his lips. In the end, he could not hold back any more and brazenly attacked. He held the blood-red sword with both hands and swung it in a mysterious trajectory. The blood-red light soared into the sky, and it was terrifying as if the sky and earth were falling apart. The moment the blood-red light shone on him, Zhuowen felt a huge pressure on his body, as if a huge mountain was pressing down on him. However, this pressure was nothing to Zhuowen, who had cultivated the Pangu sacred body. He only needed to circulate the power of the Pangu sacred body in his body to completely offset this huge pressure. However, Zhuowen's performance was not like that. His face was pale, and his forehead was covered in cold sweat. It was as if he was enduring a huge amount of pressure. When 7 Kills saw Zhuowen's reluctant look, his eyes were full of pride. He knew that the gap between him and this person was too big. It seemed that this person could not even withstand the aura that he was emitting. How could he fight with him? How boring! I thought that you would be stronger than the average Lord of Mystery and could play with me a little longer. Now, it seems that you're a complete piece of trash. You're completely useless. 7 Kills laughed loudly, and his attack had already landed on Zhuowen's body. It had to be said that 7 Kills was indeed very insidious. He slashed at Zhuowen's forehead with one sword, and at Zhuowen's crotch with the other sword. Because they were slashing at the same time and the speed was just right. However, Zhuowen Ming could only block one part of his body. If he blocked the space between his eyebrows, he would be able to preserve his life. However, his manly aura would disappear completely. If he blocked his crotch, Zhuowen Ming would also be gone. Zhuowen narrowed his eyes. This 7 Kills was really arrogant. He wanted to use this method to tease and humiliate him. Whoosh, whoosh. 2 sword lights swept out from behind Zhuowen. The Blood Immortal Sword and the Sacrifice of Death Sword instantly blocked 7 Kills' 2 sword. The Blood Immortal Sword and the Sacrifice of Death Sword had made great progress. With the help of the Sword Tomb and many ores and materials, they had both become eternal-level divine weapons. It was more than enough to block 7 Kills' casual attack. The moment they blocked 7 Kills' attack, another sword light swept out from behind Zhuowen. With the terrifying power of thunder and fire, it instantly swept to the bottom of 7 Kills' feet. Then, from bottom to top, it rushed into 7 Kills' crotch. Chapter 29:17. Jean San Sha. There was a blood-curdling scream. Lu Sha sneered and said indifferently, "He is indeed a good-for-nothing. It seems that 7th brother is in a hurry to kill this boy." Judging from the intensity of the scream, this boy is probably, when Lu Sha finished speaking, his eyes fell on the battle. Immediately, the corners of his eyes twitched, and his face stiffened. This was because the scream did not come from the young man he thought it was, but from 7 Kills, who he was full of confidence in. "6th brother, what are you waiting for? Attack with me. This boy is really not simple. He is not weak. 7th brother, you are too careless." 5 Kills was the first to react. He took a step forward and said to Lu Sha. Then, he disappeared as if he had teleported. After 6 Kills came to his senses, he let out a roar and followed 5 Kills to attack. The boy, who was just an ant in his eyes, suddenly exploded and kicked his 7th brother's manhood. This was a slap in the face for them. Lu Sha was very angry. Naturally, he wanted to kill Zhuowen to vent his anger. "Little bastard, how dare you use a dirty trick?" 7 Kills covered his crotch with both hands and quickly retreated. Snot and tears flowed down his face. Even at his level of cultivation, that part of his body was extremely fragile. Moreover, the Thunder Fire Sword was now at the peak of the eternal level. When 7 Kills was unprepared, his manhood would have been broken, no matter how hard it was. After 7 Kills quickly got used to the pain, he roared and attacked the Thunder Fire Sword with all his strength. Unfortunately, Xiao He was very cunning. The moment he attacked, he had already thought of a way to retreat. He just happened to dodge 7 Kills' attack. 7 Kills was mad. When he saw Xiao He retreating, he ignored Xiao He and chased after Xiao He. His manhood was shattered by the hateful divine sword. He knew that even if he repaired it with divine power, it would not be as good as before. All of this was caused by this abominable divine sword. He wanted to capture this divine sword and extract the artifact spirit within it. Then, he would use the divine fire to incinerate it, making it suffer the pain of being incinerated by the divine fire for eternity. Zhuowen had already arrived in front of 7 Kills. His whole body was shining with crystal light. He struck out with both hands and performed the tyrannical art of slaughtering Tao. It was as if he had become a fighting machine. Scram! 7 Kills' eyes were red. He slapped Zhuowen. Clearly, he did not care about Zhuowen at all. All he cared about was the Thunder Fire Sword. Zhuowen sneered inwardly. He formed a palm with his right hand and abruptly struck out, shattering Qi Sha's palm. Then, his left hand ruthlessly struck Qi Sha's face. The terrifying power sent 7 Kills flying. Countless cracks appeared on his head. Qi Sha was in a daze. His eyes rolled back and he was delirious. Zhuowen took a step forward, wanting to give Qi Sha the final blow. Unfortunately, 5 Kills and 6 Kills had already arrived. 6 Kills was holding a huge blood halberd. He threw the halberd in the air. The blood halberd was extremely fast. It turned into a terrifying blood light in the air and quickly landed in front of Zhuowen's chest. 6 Kills was much stronger than 7 Kills. The power of the blood halberd thrown with all his strength was also very terrifying. Of course, 6 Kills was quite satisfied with this attack. In his opinion, the blood halberd flying in the air would definitely injure the young man severely. Boom! Zhuowen's right foot stomped on the air, causing a terrifying explosive sound to erupt. Shortly after, his right palm borrowed the force of his right foot to fiercely slap the body of the blood halberd. A terrifying force swept out, forming circle after circle of terrifying air wave. Then, 6 Kills was stunned to find that the blood halberd he threw with all his strength had been knocked away by the young man's palm. Moreover, there were traces of cracks on the surface of the blood halberd. What kind of power did this require to make the blood halberd, which was a half-step Genesis divine artifact, crack? This was unbelievable. The moment Zhuowen blasted away the blood halberd, 5 kills had already arrived. 5 kills throughout an exquisite fist technique. After a set of fist techniques, the energy of the entire starry sky seemed to gather around 5 kills. It was as if Zhuowen was not facing a person, but a huge star. Zhuowen sneered in his heart. His 5 fingers clenched into fists. He also punched 5 kills' fists violently. He cultivated the Pangu sacred body, so he was not afraid of this kind of violent collision. Under this starry sky, no race's physical strength could compare with Pangu's. After dozens of punches in an instant, 5 kills grunted and retreated hundreds of steps. Both of his fists were badly mangled, and his fists were trembling non-stop. On the other hand, Zhuowen's fists were crystal clear, as if they were carved out of the most perfect jade in the world. Under the attack just now, Zhuowen's fists were not damaged at all. How is this possible? 5 kills' eyes were glazed. This fist technique was passed down from his ancestors. It was a fist technique that followed the path of the heavenly Tao. Its power was terrifying. It was because of this fist technique that 5 kills was much stronger than other cultivators of the same level. Moreover, his assassination ability was much weaker than his direct attack ability. All of this was because of this fist technique. But now, this fist technique that had always been successful was simply trash in front of Zhuowen. Zhuowen did not even use any fist technique. His attacks were not fancy at all. They were just casual punches. You're too weak. Zhuowen's eyes were calm. He took a step forward and continued to rush toward 5 kills. He still punched without any fancy move. 5 kills was irritated by Zhuowen's words. He exerted his fist technique to the extreme. It seemed to have transcended time and space. Its power was many times stronger than before. You've improved a little. Zhuowen punched out. He was evenly matched with 5 kills. His eyes were full of surprise. 5 kills' face was gloomy. He shouted, "Sixth brother, what are you waiting for? Come and finish this guy together." 6 kills was not far away. He had already put away his blood halberd. He was shocked to see 5 kills being suppressed by Zhuowen. He knew 5 kills' strength very well. He knew that 5 kills' cultivation was only 1 level higher than his, but his actual strength was more than 1 level higher than his. But now, 5 kills, who was very powerful in his heart, was easily defeated by Zhuowen. Naturally, he felt very unbalanced. Now that 5 kills had spoken, he naturally could not continue to watch the show. He roared and rushed forward. The blood halberd in his hand danced, and countless blood halberd shadows appeared, surrounding Zhuowen. Zhuowen did not care about the halberd shadows at all. Instead, his whole body shone brightly and he attacked 5 kills. Chapter 29:18. Doubt. How dare you ignore my attacks? Seeing that Zhuowen completely ignored his attacks, 6 kills' face suddenly darkened. Obviously, Zhuowen's disregard was the greatest contempt for him. But soon, a cruel look appeared in his eyes. His attacks might not be as strong as 5 kills, but if he wanted to resist without defending, he would have to pay a terrible price. Bang! Countless halberd silhouettes landed on Zhuowen's body, causing Zhuowen's charging figure to stagger. His speed slowed down as the halberd silhouettes left white marks on his body. But that was all. After Zhuowen withstood this wave of halberd attacks, he did not slow down and rushed toward 5 kills again. 6 kills was stunned. His attacks only left white marks on Yi Futian's body. They could not even cause a wound. This was too shocking. Bang! 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 Zhuowen collided with 5 kills again. The power of the peak 5-star Pangu's sacred body burst out without reservation. He also used the tyrannical Tao slaughtering technique to the extreme, making him look like a terrifying fighting machine. The more 5 kills fought, the more frightened he became. The injuries on his body also became more and more terrifying. He began to feel fear. At this moment, Zhuowen was like a towering mountain sitting in front of him, making him feel like he was being pressured and suffocated. At the same time, he cursed his employer in his heart. He had seriously underestimated the strength of the target. If he had known that the target was so terrifying, he would have needed at least one of the top 3 of 7 kills to cooperate with them. To be honest, their lineup was not enough for this person. 5 kills only felt pain in his right arm. Then, he found that his right arm had been torn off by Zhuowen. The intense pain made him scream involuntarily. 5 kills was really scared. He began to retreat, but soon found that he had no way out. He had been completely locked on by the young man in front of him. He could only fight. Running away would only make him die faster. Let's fight. After finding that there was no way out, 5 kills went all out and began to fight Zhuowen to the death. I've played enough with you. I'm not playing anymore. Zhuowen smiled faintly. Then, his right hand formed into a blade and formed a mysterious trajectory in the air. He suddenly slashed out, and a white blade of air that reached the heavens and the earth shot out. Its surface emitted an aura that transcended the way of the heavens. 5 kills screamed. In front of this white chi blade, he was like an insignificant ant. He tried his best to 6 kills. In the end, he could only watch as his body was split into 2 halves by the white blade of air. His spirit was also split into 2 halves, and his consciousness completely dissipated. The moment 6 kills saw 5 kills being killed, he immediately used an escape technique to retreat. But unfortunately, Zhuowen already had eyes on him. He translation the moment 6 kills, 6 kills, translation. 6 kills, translation, and 6 kills, 6 kills, 6 kill. 6 kills looked at the young man with a hideous smile in front of him, and felt a chill in his heart. He wanted to beg for mercy, but he found that his head had been separated from his body. It turned out that Zhuowen had used the sky-splitting blade to cut off 6 kills' head. After 5 kills and 6 kills were completely killed, 7 kills, who had just woken up, happened to see 5 kills and 6 kills die. He trembled all over and knelt down. My lord, we failed to recognize Mount Tai and offended you. Please be magnanimous and spare my lowly life. 7 kills trembled, and his voice became a little shrill. Zhuowen silently looked at 7 kills, who was begging for mercy. He was speechless. Compared to 6 kills and 5 kills, 7 kills was obviously more righteous. To put it bluntly, 7 kills was the most spineless of the 3. It's not like I can't spare your lowly life. Tell me, who is your employer? Zhuowen asked indifferently. Employer? 7 kills looked uncertain. He could only say helplessly, My lord, this mission is very secret. It was issued by our big brother. He didn't disclose the employer's information, so we don't know who the employer is. The big brother you speak of is 1 kill of the blood prison's 7 kills, right? Zhuowen said indifferently. Zhuowen had also heard of the blood prison's 7 kills. He knew that the 7 kills were the management of the blood prison and were the 7 most terrifying assassins in the blood prison. The 3 assassins who came to kill him this time were the weakest of the 7 kills. The strongest should be 1 kill, who was also the most mysterious and powerful of the 7 kills. 7 kills quickly nodded, a flattering smile on his face. In that case, I'd like to ask you, how did the 3 of you know in advance that I was going to pass by here and ambush me in advance? Zhuowen stared at 7 kills, his body suddenly releasing a powerful aura. His expression was very unfriendly. 7 kills trembled. He could feel the killing intent in Zhuowen's eyes. He had no doubt that if he dared to lie, the latter would kill him with thunderous means. 7 Kills hesitated for a moment and said somewhat timidly, "I'm not too sure about this. It was our boss who gave us the location and told us to ambush you here in advance." In other words, the person who knew in advance that I would pass by here was the employer? Zhuowen said. 7 Kills was silent. This matter was already very obvious. 1 Kill was the leader of the blood prison and had never met Zhuowen. It was certainly impossible for him to know in advance about Zhuowen's route. Only the employer who hired the blood prison to kill him would provide such information, and this employer was definitely someone Zhuowen knew. Zhuowen could not help but think of a figure in his mind. The news of him going to the star battlefield this time was only known to the Alliance Master of the Pill Array Immortal Alliance, Ji Wuming and Huan Taiping. Moreover, the star battlefield's star map was also given to him by Ji Wuming. If there was anyone who knew his route the best, it would be Ji Wuming. However, Zhuowen was very surprised by his guess. At the same time, he found it inconceivable. Ji Wuming valued him very much and had even given him the position of an immortal master. He had even entrusted the Pill Array Dao Domains qualifiers 200 years later to him. He really could not figure out why Ji Wuming, who valued him so much, would hire the blood prison to kill him. What was his motive? Thinking of this, Zhuowen felt a little irritable and uneasy. Although Zhuowen's mind was full of doubts and he had the urge to return to the Pill Array Immortal Alliance directly, he knew that it was not appropriate to go back now. Moreover, he had already arrived at the star battlefield. There was no need to go back just to ask such a question. He knew very well that even if this matter was not ordered by Ji Wuming, the answer he would get would be negative. Use the divine divination technique to calculate Ji Wuming first. Chapter 29:19. Starry Sky camped. The moment the eye of nothingness condensed, Zhuowen's face became even paler. He could clearly feel that his lifespan was rapidly slipping away. The most direct manifestation of this was that his body became extremely weak at this moment, as if he was suffering from a serious illness. Pucci! Zhuowen spat out a mouthful of blood, but his expression was very ugly. Using the art of divine calculation twice in such a short period of time was too much of a burden on him. It even forced him to suffer from serious internal injuries. The person who hired the blood prison assassins to assassinate me was indeed Ji Wuming. Why did he do this? Zhuowen's eyes were gloomy. He could see from the eye of nothingness that the person who hired the assassins was Ji Wuming, the leader of the Pill Array Immortal Alliance. Could it be the dead flower? Zhuowen's eyes lit up. He remembered that when he gave all the information about the dead flower to Ji Wuming, the latter did not immediately announce it to the world. Instead, he changed the topic. At that time, Zhuowen did not pay much attention to it. Now that he thought about it, Ji Wuming's previous behavior was indeed a little abnormal. It seems that I can't go back to the Pill Array Immortal Alliance. Zhuowen sighed. He was a little depressed. He had just become an immortal master of the Pill Array Immortal Alliance, but he had already fallen out with the Alliance and became a rogue cultivator without anyone to rely on. Moreover, he couldn't talk about the dead flower now. Who knew how many forces were involved in the research of the dead flower? Perhaps if he let it slip, it would lead to a disaster. Then, the losses would outweigh the gains. Moreover, he had given all the information about the dead flower to Ji Wuming. Without this information, he could only talk about it verbally without any evidence. At that time, he would bring a lot of trouble. Let's go to the dark ancient city first. Zhuowen's eyes flickered. He planned to explore the dark ancient city first. His current strength was still too low. Even with the Yama ghost diagram, his strength was at most comparable to an ordinary creator. If his Pangu sacred body could reach the 6-star level, He might not be able to defeat Sin Qin, the lord of Tongtian. However, it would not be easy for Senki Yin to kill him. By then, Zhuowen would have the ability to protect himself in the host region to a certain extent. Therefore, if the corpse of ancestral shaman Gonggong really existed in the dark ancient city, then he must find the goo worm in Gonggong's body. After fusing with the Gonggong goo, Zhuowen believed that he had a chance to break through to the six-star realm. The space within the astral battlefield was vast. The stars that floated within it were all suffused with a blood-red glow, giving off a bloodthirsty glow. The Star Wars battlefield was divided into 4 regions. These 4 regions were under the charge of the Xianmi Heavenly Region's 4 great Dao domains. Zhuowen had entered the encampment of the Star Wars battlefield that the host region was in charge of. It was called the Eastern Space Camp. Zhuowen remembered that this Star Wars battlefield was the most important place in the Xianmi Heavenly Domain. It was said that the Dao Lords of the 4 Dao domains were stationed in the 4 camps of the Star Wars battlefield all year round. The so-called Dao Lord of each Dao domain was the person in charge of each Dao domain. He was also the strongest person in each Dao domain. He was the person with the highest authority in charge of all the forces in the entire Dao domain. Even the Dao Palace level forces in the Dao domain had to listen to the orders of the Dao Lord. This was because the Dao Lord represented the master of the entire Dao domain. He was a supreme existence. Originally, the 4 Dao Lords were not stationed in the Star Wars battlefield a long time ago. Instead, they stayed in their respective Dao domains and were in charge of the forces in their respective Dao domains. However, tens of thousands of years ago, the foreign races from the primitive heavenly region invaded the Xianmi heavenly region on a large scale. Nearly half of the 10 great races of the primitive heavenly region were mobilized. Moreover, the leaders of each race had participated in this battle. That battle was very tragic. The Xianmi heavenly region's Star Wars camp was almost attacked. In the end, the 4 Dao Lords joined forces and barely managed to repel the foreign races from the primitive heavenly region. They managed to protect the Xianmi heavenly region's Star Wars camp. Moreover, after that tragic lesson, the 4 Dao Lords decided to stay in the Star Wars camp all year round. Unless something major happened in their Dao domains, they would not leave the Star Wars battlefield easily. Zhuowen had learned about the 4 Dao Lords from Ghost Plume. It was said that the Eastern Dao Lord who guarded the Eastern Star Wars camp was called Tan Xinghua. He was a powerful expert with great talent and bold vision. His strength was at least at the peak of the early-stage heaven-reaching Master Realm. After so many years, Ghost Plume guessed that Tan Xinghua should have broken through and reached the mid-stage heaven-reaching Master Realm. At this moment, 3 figures appeared at the entrance of the Eastern Star Wars camp. The person in the lead was a young man with 2 scars on his face. This young man was Zhuowen in disguise. Of course, his current name was still Ma Yujie. The 2 people following behind Zhuowen were one old and one young. They were naturally Ghost Plume and Yin Wuxia. At this moment, Ghost Plume was following behind Zhuowen in a daze. Zhuowen had indeed promised not to kill him, but he had extracted a strand of his soul and forced him to become Zhuowen's slave. His life and death were in Zhuowen's hands. The entrance to the Eastern Star Wars camp was a huge hollow bronze door. The bronze door was covered in a coppery green color and looked unremarkable. However, the vicissitudes and heaviness that were faintly emitted from it made it obvious at a glance that this bronze door was definitely not an ordinary object. Moreover, it was very old and ancient. The guards guarding the 2 sides of the bronze door were only Heaven Dao Lords. However, Zhuowen could sense the austere aura coming from these 2 guards. Only those who had experienced countless massacres would have such an austere aura. Zhuowen had no doubt that although these 2 guards were only Heaven Dao Lords, ordinary Heaven Dao Lords were no match for these 2 guards in a real battle. "Which sect do the 3 of you come from?" When Zhuowen led Ghost Plume and Yin Wuxia through the entrance, the two guards stopped the three of them and asked calmly, "We don't belong to any sect. We are itinerant cultivators." Zhuowen replied, "Since you are itinerant cultivators, each of you has to pay 10 high-grade Heaven Dao crystals," the guard said. Zhuowen revealed a surprised expression and asked in return, "Do you mean that cultivators who belong to sects don't have to pay?" Yin Wuxia pulled Zhuowen and whispered, "Master, these are the rules. Itinerant cultivators who don't belong to any sect have to pay 10 high-grade Heaven Dao crystals. On the other hand, Dao Order disciples have to pay 5 high-grade Heavenly Dao crystals, while Dao Palace disciples only have to pay 3 high-grade Heavenly Dao crystals. On the other hand, Dao Palace disciples don't have to pay any Heavenly Dao crystals." Zhuowen was surprised. He didn't expect the Star Wars camp to have such a rule. After handing over 30 high-grade Heaven Path crystals, the three of them were able to enter the Universal campsite smoothly. After entering, Zhuowen realized that he seemed to have entered another world. It was obvious that the Star Wars camp's exterior was set up with a very powerful array formation. Only when one truly entered the Star Wars camp could they see the true appearance of the Star Wars camp. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.